Hey guys and welcome back to my channel. This is part 2 of What If Naruto was in high school DxD and got a harem with Serafall, Kuroka and Yasaka. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and also go and support the author, link in description. Underworld. The next day. Unknown location. We can see a 6-year-old red-haired girl with a sad aura that was very noticeable, and it was something strange in her because normally she was smiling. The reason for that? Well, she had a fight with her parents, and why would a 6-year-old girl have a fight with them? There would be many reasons for that. Normally it would be a small problem. However, this time it was not like that. She wanted to visit her friend and the person who saved her. He had said it in person and she took it as a promise. She did not want her word to be empty. But unfortunately for her, her parents thought differently, something she did not like at all. She didn't want to break her word, it was very important to her. But since she was a child, she couldn't disobey her parents, or could she? If you're not going to let me go, then I'll have to do it without them noticing, she said with a determined look. She wasn't going to let her words be a lie. Maybe Oni-sama can take me. The plan she had seemed simple to do. If she talked to her older brother, it was very certain that he would take her. Her plan had no flaws. With that said, she went looking for her brother everywhere. Unfortunately, she never found him. She didn't know where he was. He had a depressive aura because of it. She thought her brother could help her as he always had. However, this time it seemed impossible. If Oni-sama isn't here, I'll have to do it alone. She was a little sad that her brother couldn't help her, but she still wouldn't turn around what he said. With her initial plan failing, she decided to do another one that was a little more difficult but not impossible. Leaving her house without anyone seeing her, that was her master plan. It wasn't that difficult and she had already done it once and it worked perfectly. It's a foolproof plan, so I'll be able to see them, he said with a smile. Oto-san and Oka-san will never find out. He had a confident expression as he said the last thing. His parents would never realize what he was about to do, or so he thought, if it weren't for a certain silver-haired girl who was passing by at that moment. So Ojo-sama is planning to escape. I have to tell Venelana-sama and Zeotaka-sama. Hearing what she said, the most feasible thing was to tell them what she was about to do. However, after just turning her head for a few moments, she couldn't see her anymore. She had two options. Tell them what was happening, and with a possibility that they would lose sight of her, or follow her and see where she was going. The answer seemed to be the first one. If they used several guards and herself included, they could find her. But somehow she always managed to not be found, and if they lost sight of her, it could be something very bad. Besides, she didn't know where she was going. There are many places where a child could go. So she decided on the second option, hoping that she wouldn't make a mistake in the decision she just made. At the same time, Seatree Mansion. Main door. How much longer will I have to wait? A blonde man spoke up, with a slight annoyance in his voice. He didn't think that anyone other than his sensei would be so slow. His thoughts were wrong. The person he was waiting for was taking a while, but it wasn't at the level of his sensei. So he could wait calmly without getting desperate. I don't know, Gaki, so save your comments and let me sleep. I don't understand why you're awake so early. I speak to him in an annoyed manner. Early? But it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon, how can you sleep for so long? That's too early for me, so let me sleep. And why do I sleep for so long? Do you think there's anything else to do besides sleeping in this place? Okay, good point. Although aren't you supposed to be in a headspace? I know what you mean, and I have no answer for that. It's your mental space, not mine. Why don't you try it while you wait for the girl to arrive? You know, I always had that doubt. I never tried it, but now is a good time. Being in a sewer is a little depressing, right? Yes, do you know what it's like to live in one? It's a nightmare, plus it's very narrow, he said, annoyed at remembering how he lived when he was in Naruto's seal. Although this place is better than how it was in your mother's seal. Did you know that they had me in some kind of sphere with stakes for my tails and my limbs? That's too inhumane even for me. I would kill them all alone with a bijudama, and it would be more merciful than where they had me locked up. A drop of sweat ran down Naruto's cheeks at what Kurama said. He hadn't expected that comment. But if it seemed bad to him that they had him like that in his mother's seal, It made him remember how Sun was trapped with those chains when he saw him for the first time. He didn't like the way he was and that's why he helped him get it out. The positive side of everything is that the Biju were no longer locked up. Well, I guess I'll try to change the place to something more pleasant. He entered his mental space and decided to make the change quickly so as not to make his sealed partner wait, but he couldn't think of a place that was comfortable for him and Kurama. So he decided to ask him. Mental space. Hey Kurama, since I'm going to change this place, how would you like it to be? Good question, I had never thought about that before. I just wanted a place that was comfortable and where I could move around without having any restrictions because of the location. That doesn't give me much choice, you know. Then just make a forest like the ones in Konoha only so I can hide in those places. The decorations you want will be your thing. I just want to have freedom to move around this place and not be in just one place. It's very uncomfortable to stay in just one place. That's a great idea. I'll be able to put up several things I liked about Konoha's surroundings. He said in an animated manner. He thought he wouldn't be able to see some places he liked to visit when he was a child and some important places he couldn't see anymore, but now he could see them, even if they aren't real. It's okay, do whatever you want, but do it quietly. Can't you see I'm trying to sleep? He said, annoyed by the noise. Okay. Don't be angry, when you wake up you'll see that everything will be as you said. A few minutes passed that made it into an hour and in that time the blonde was able to change the place. It took him a while because he didn't know how to make things change the way he wanted. But when he managed to do it for the first time it became easier every time he did it, and with a little effort he achieved it. He was finally done. Now he had a small problem, which was, where is Kurama? He had concentrated so much on doing it that he had lost sight of where he was, and even more so when he was able to change the shape of the bars that had the Biju imprisoned. It was a surprise that he wouldn't like, but it would look funny. He held back a laugh at what he did and decided to leave the mental space. He didn't want to be present when he realized what he did to him. Out of the mental space. I hope I didn't spend too much time in there. I can't tell how much time I spend there and here outside of mental space. Fortunately for him there was no one around, so he had a small sigh. He didn't think she would take so long. So he came up with an idea, go to Serafall's room. With her way of being she may have fallen asleep, so he tried to enter to go to her room. Fortunately for him when he was a few steps away from entering the door opened, but it wasn't Serafall, it was Sona. He wondered why she opened the door, so he asked her, "Why are you outside?" Sona looked at him in surprise. She wasn't expecting Naruto at the door. She wanted to follow her sister to find out what required his attention. It could be her chance to find something that could save her from the embarrassing moments she made her go through, so she decided to do it. But it seems she couldn't do it since Naruto discovered her, or she could make this part of her plan to get him to help her. She had nothing to offer as a deal, but she could try. "Hey, it's a mission I have to do by myself. But could you come with me?" she said with the most tender expression she could muster. If it worked on her sister when she used it once, why not on Naruto? A mission? What kind of mission is it? He spoke normally. It seemed that her tenderness didn't affect him. Or so it seemed, because, inside he had an inexplicable desire to hug her until he burst, or maybe he was becoming a torturer for wanting to hug someone until they explode. He got a little tense thinking that. He didn't want to do the second thing he thought. Still, he couldn't help but think about it. A mission of surveillance. She didn't know what the mission he told her she would have could be about, so she told him the first thing that came to her head. She hoped that Naruto would help her do this even if she knew what she had to do, because she read several detective books and she didn't know how to do it in real life, so someone older than her could help her. Besides, he was very strong and could help her if any problem occurred. Surveillance. Who do you want to keep an eye on? Her having a mission seemed interesting. He would like to accompany her and see what she wanted to do. But he couldn't be in two places at once, could he? "That's a secret. I'll only tell you if you come with me," she said seriously. She wanted the blonde to help her, but she couldn't risk the mission she had set for herself. It was very important for her to do this, and she didn't want to ruin what she was about to do. Okay, I'll go with you, but I won't do it myself. At least not personally. You're going with me, but you're not going with me. Sona was very confused. How is he supposed to accompany her, but not him? And how are you supposed to do it? That's very simple to answer. I can make clones, remember? Sona nodded. Somehow she had forgotten that fact. It was somewhat strange because she saw him in person. Okay, but you will have to help me in everything I tell you. Naruto nodded with a drop of sweat sliding down his forehead. Even if Sona was a child, she somehow listened to what he told her without protest. It may be very likely that it was because of his tone of voice. He decided it was better not to make her angry. He did not want to have to hear her voice like that. It scared him for some reason. Somehow he remembered his mother with her hair raised and in the shape of 9 tails. That was weird. I don't remember seeing her like that when we met. It must be nothing. I left that thought behind. I didn't know why I remembered it, but I didn't think about it any further. Of course, he'll do whatever you tell him. She did the hand positions and made a clone. As usual, a cloud of smoke appeared, and Sona could see in person how the clone was made. I didn't think that. He did the same thing when he appeared and disappeared, although why did he do that with his hands? He had a question to ask him, but it wasn't the time to ask it. The reason for that, someone was opening the door, so he decided to run with the clone to a hiding place. The person who had opened it was her older sister. She had a small sigh. She had almost failed her mission. She gave a look to the clone who was confused. She didn't understand why they had to leave so quickly, but she was given a mission which was to follow Sona's orders. And she would fulfill it, until she ran out of chakra. Okay, we'll start the mission when my sister leaves, so follow me and do everything I tell you, okay? I whisper. The clone just nodded. He didn't want him to be the cause of his failure, so he decided to remain silent so that he wouldn't be discovered. That's why he just shook his head. With Naruto. The blonde was a little confused. Sona left very quickly and he didn't understand. He just shrugged his shoulders. It was surely because of the mission he had. It was a good idea to give him a clone in case he got into trouble. He didn't think anything would happen. But you should never be careless with children. If he was one, he did all kinds of mischief in the village. And he was always in trouble. He laughed a little, remembering what he did to an Anbu when they tried to catch him for painting the Hokage's faces. Sorry for making you wait so long, but I had a little problem before I got here. Serafall said, but the blonde didn't hear her. She thought he was upset for making him wait so long. I know I took so long, but I didn't think it would be that long. She got a little depressed, and tried to talk to him again. When she saw that he was holding back the urge to laugh, she pouted a little because it made her think he was upset. What's so funny? She said with a little resentment, thinking that he was making fun of her. Naruto reacted when he was asked the question. And he could see how she was dressed. She was wearing a white strapless dress with light brown edges, along with a belt of the same color as the edges of her dress, and she was wearing a necklace with several types of jewels, but the one that stood out the most among all was the one in the middle that had a silver coating. For the blonde, she looked very good wearing that clothing. He wanted to give some compliment, but he couldn't. So he decided to answer her question with a little nervousness that he managed to control before he could speak. Oh, it's nothing, just a funny memory I had when I was a child. He spoke to her with a smile. By the way, when did you get here? I didn't see when you were outside. I arrived a few moments ago, but now that I'm here, what was it you wanted to look for? I never let him talk, so I didn't know what he was looking for, so I decided to ask before taking him from one place to another. Even if that was his initial plan. It was something simple. I just wanted to get a change of clothes. And maybe some books. Do you know where a library is? For the blonde, saying the last thing was something he would never say when he was in his world, but he was no longer in his own. So he should learn from the place he is in right now, even if he has to do something he never liked since he went to the academy, and that was studying. That's easy to get. We can go to Lilith. And there's a library in here if you want to look something up. She had a mental sigh, knowing that she didn't have to get many things. It's not that she doesn't want to spend her time with him, she just thought that she would look for rare and hard to find things. For some reason she thought it would be like that, even without knowing that he only wanted something simple like clothes. Maybe I should take Sotan with us, but I haven't seen her all day. Where is she? I don't think she's gone out. She's probably in the library always reading books. I think she plans to replace me with those books. If so, should I burn them? No one steals my sotan even if it's a book. She was raving about books stealing sisters and about burning every book she sees, which unintentionally was making expressions unconsciously. Naruto looked at her with a nervous smile at what she was doing. He decided not to ask what he was doing. His instincts told him it would be a bad idea and he listened to them. They had never failed him and they never would. 10 minutes passed with Serafall acting like that. Naruto risked moving her a little to get her attention. Even if his instincts told him not to do it, he did it. Luckily for him nothing happened and Serafall reacted. Sigh, it's good that you're calm now. You were making weird expressions for 10 minutes, did something happen? No, it's nothing. I was just wondering where Sotan might be. Haven't you seen her? She gave him a look that denoted hope along with a smile. On the outside she looked like a normal person, but on the inside she had a plan to eradicate all the books she saw, so that her sister wouldn't be stolen from her. She had a perfect plan to do it without anyone being able to blame her for it, and it all started with an element that was against her family. I saw her, walking through the halls, why do you ask? He was about to say that he saw her outside and talked to her. But he remembered that she had a mission and it was possible that he would make it fail if he told her about what he was doing to Serafall. Oh, I hadn't seen her all morning. That's why I asked you. You don't know what she was doing. She didn't have a book with her, did she? He said obsessively. Naruto was a little scared by that. He preferred not to prolong his time in silence any longer and spoke. And no, I haven't seen her with a book. When she said that Serafall seemed more relaxed, now it could be said that she didn't understand women. They changed their attitude quickly, and she got confused every time they did or said something. He wondered how Senin managed to understand the women he always talked to in the brothels he always went to. Maybe he would have asked her for advice about women if he had known about this, to save himself problems with women in the future. It's a shame that he would never see her again. At the same time Naruto was thinking about how incomprehensible women are, Serafall had other thoughts. It seems that the books were saved, even so, I shouldn't get too confident. Sotan might want to replace me with something, I won't allow it. I won't be separated from my Sotan. Well, leaving the questions aside, I already know where we should go. She had a smile and the attitude she always had. Apparently she had forgotten about the sister replacement books and took more importance to Naruto at that moment. So what is the name of that place? We will go to the capital of the Underworld, Lilith. The blonde nodded. That seemed like a good place to get the clothes he needed, not to mention that it's the capital of the Underworld, so there should be a lot of things there. Serafall made a magic circle so she could go to Naruto's side, but she spoke to him before he used it. You know I can't use magic, so it's very possible that that won't work. She nodded. She had forgotten about that detail, so they decided to do it the slower way. Which was to go on foot. 1. Lilith. It took them an hour to reach Lilith. Why didn't it take them longer? The reason for that was that Naruto carried Serafall all the way running with the instructions she gave him so as not to get lost in the direction she had to take. It took all his willpower not to blush when he told her he would carry her on his back. He could have arrived faster but he couldn't. His body couldn't reach the maximum speed it could do before, and it was no excuse to be able to use the chakra cloak just because he wanted to go faster. Naruto made a mental note to add weights like Lee did so he could move faster. When he saw him take them off in the Chunin exam he wanted to do the same to gain speed. Maybe I can do that seal that Senin put on me when we trained. It didn't let me move, but what was its name? Could Kurama know? I think I'll ask him when he's not upset about what I did to him in the seal image change. It was just so he could move freely in the forest that he did. There wasn't much of a problem for him. Kurama might see it differently, so he'll wait for him to wake up and calm down so he can talk to him. Okay, we're here, so let's go look for some clothes. Serafall exclaimed. The blonde could have made a mistake that would be marked for life, which was being accompanied by a woman when buying clothes. Serafall dragged him to all kinds of clothing stores she could see, almost making him wear a magical girl dress. But luck was with Naruto and he was able to get away from that. While they searched for the clothes he wanted, he was able to see what the capital of the Underworld was like. He thought it would be a little spooky, but instead it was a nice place. They had a little break from their search and exploration. They sat in a park that was nearby. Even if there were several people in it, you could say that the atmosphere was nice. I didn't think I couldn't find a clothing store that I like. It seemed easier in my head. He said, depressed. He didn't like going from store to store, but at least he got to know a little bit of the underworld. I wonder if there is a blacksmith. I don't have any of my ninja weapons. I should look for one. Without my weapons I could only have a fight at hand and I won't always be able to do it. He had forgotten his ninja tools. Luckily for him, she remembered before he could leave the place. Serafall, can I ask you something? She nods and says to him. Sure, tell me, what's your question? He said, smiling. She was having fun looking for things with Naruto, even if they didn't find anything she likes. You don't know, where can I find a blacksmith? She understood what he meant. Ninja were supposed to use throwing knives and stars to fight. Oh, I'm sorry to say, but I don't know any blacksmith. Maybe Sears-X-chan knows where to get some. You want to get your ninja tools, right? The blonde nodded. He didn't know how she could know what he wanted. But he wasn't going to complain about it. At least now he knew that Sears-X could help him with his weapons problem. I guess we should continue with the search, right? Naruto said. The purple-eyed girl just smiled, and they left the bench where she was sitting next to the blonde. She didn't think she would have fun just looking for clothes. She wouldn't complain. Doing this was better than doing her job as a Mao. On the other hand, the sister of the Mao Leviathan and the blonde's clone were not having a day. With Sona. At the beginning of the mission she set for herself, it seemed simple. And it was until they arrived at Lilith, they got lost in the streets of the place and didn't know where they were. It didn't seem like a good place since everything was in bad condition. She didn't understand how she got there if she was supposed to follow her sister correctly. She had gone to the right, forward, right again, then left, or it was forward, right and. She definitely got lost. The good side was that she had a clone of Naruto. The place where they were didn't give her a good feeling. So if something happened she could count on help from someone strong. Excuse the interruption, but do you know where we are? He said respectfully. She was silent for a moment. She didn't want to say that they were lost, not yet. So she continued with her typical calm attitude and spoke to her. Yes, this is just a shortcut to be able to follow my sister. The clone just nodded. Since he saw who he was following, he quickly understood that he was following the boss and Serafall. For some reason he didn't understand why that was, but he just needed to obey the orders given to him by the original. And that was what he was going to do. He wouldn't fail his orders and he would never question what he was asked to do. We just have to keep going straight and we can find my sister. The clone did as he was told. They advanced in that direction for about 10 minutes. Sona became restless. The indication she gave to the clone was wrong. She didn't know how to get out of that place. Maybe she should have stayed home and read some books while she waited for her sister to arrive. She wouldn't be going through the anguish of being lost. She was lucky to have someone she knew to help her with whatever she needed. If the clone wasn't there she would probably be very scared. When she left her thoughts, she felt the clone stop walking. He was standing in front of a kind of house that was very neglected. She didn't know who owned the house. But the clone was calm, so it could be that there were no bad people in that place. He gave her a look indicating that she should approach what could be called a door. The clone did so and she knocked on the door. Excuse me. Is there anyone there? Fortunately for her, it seemed like someone was inside. It sounded like a woman. Her assumptions were right when she saw that a girl opened the door. She stood still for a moment. For some reason she couldn't stop looking at the blonde with curiosity. Why do you have marks on your cheeks nya? She moved her head a little and managed to see the head of a girl. Oh, sorry for not noticing you, but what are you doing there nya? Sona blinked in confusion. Why are you saying that after finishing talking? It's because I have a little tic when I talk. She lied about the reason for her way of speaking. She might be a little carefree, but she wasn't going to tell everyone that she was a yokai. If she did, it was very likely that several demons would come looking for her, to use her pieces to reincarnate her, and she didn't want that to happen. First she had to worry about her sister. Now, what's the reason for knocking on the door nya? She said in a friendly manner. The one who had knocked on the door seemed to be the girl, so she shouldn't be speaking to her in a hostile manner. Besides, when she looked at the blonde she felt an energy similar to hers. He could be a yokai. Maybe those marks on his cheeks could tell her what kind of yokai it was, if it was one. The truth is, we are lost and we found your house as we headed forward. I speak with sadness as I tell the truth. For her it was time to tell it, she didn't think it was convenient to lie more. How could they get lost on the way nya? If the blonde was supposed to be the elder who was supposed to help her, how could they get lost on their way? We were following my Oni-sama, but she was moving too fast and we lost sight of her. She might be lost but I wouldn't give too much information to a person I just met, she might help him find his way back. Well, that's a problem. Don't you want to come in and relax for a moment? You seem nervous, maybe if you were calm you could remember the way. And if you can't, I'll tell you the directions you should take to get to the beginning of the city, okay nya. Sona accepted the offer that was given to her. If she couldn't remember how to get there then she'll tell her how to get back. She got off the clone until she remembered that she never asked her name so she decided to do it. Excuse me, but what's your name? The girl just stopped for a moment and turned her head looking at her giving her the answer to her question. Kuroka, that's my name. What are yours nya? Mine is Sona and this is Naruto. She answered for both of them and the blonde nodded when she said his name. The newly called Kuroka looked a little strange at the interaction between the two of them. If he wasn't blonde she could say that he would be her brother. At first glance it was noticeable that he was trying to protect her from everything. Okay, let's go inside, Kuroka said calmly. At the same time with Rias. She had executed her master plan and escaped from her house without anyone noticing, but now she didn't know how to get to Sona's house. She didn't think about that part of the plan, now she didn't know what to do. The good side was that she ended up reaching Lilith, she could ask for help to get there. But who could she ask? Luckily for Rias, she was able to see the Serafall. She didn't know what she was doing there but she wouldn't question her luck. She approached her and could see her next to the person who saved her. She was unsure of why the two were in Lilith, but she spoke to them anyway. Naruto, a girl's voice shouted that the blonde recognized. Rias, he turned to his sides to find her. Until he turned around and could see her, it seemed that she was alone. A girl her age is not supposed to be alone. He gave a look to Serafall who was also surprised to see her alone. He thought that maybe she was with Searsex, but he did not see him anywhere. He shrugged his shoulders. If she was not with him she should have someone watching her. But now that she was with them there would be no problem with her being alone, since the two of them could protect her. Oh, Rias-chan, what are you doing alone in Lilith? Serafall said cheerfully. I was trying to find a way to visit Sona and Naruto, but I didn't know who to ask. And that's when I saw you too. What are you doing? She said, happy to find them and curious in the end. We were looking for clothes for Naruto, don't you want to come with us? Of course. Even if this wasn't part of his plan to visit them. Nothing prevented him from doing it. So he followed the two to a store that caught the blonde's attention. They entered the store. It didn't look expensive, it was more of a simple but cozy look. Somehow the store seemed comfortable. Welcome. How can I help you? Said the cheerful shopkeeper. We're looking for clothes for him, Rias said quickly to his question, pointing at the blonde. The shopkeeper examined Naruto from head to toe to see what style of clothing he could wear. It seemed that he wanted flexibility and comfort. His clothes resembled the clothes that humans wore when they exercised. I think I have what you were looking for, please follow me. He led them to an aisle that was at the back of the store that had several types of clothing in plain sight. The strange thing was that there were not many people in the store. The clothes looked of good quality, but for some reason they did not attract the attention of others. That was noticed by the blonde and the purple-eyed girl. It seemed a little strange to them. But they put it aside. Maybe the store was new and did not have many customers for that very reason. Well, I hope you like the clothes in this section, he said that last thing and left. The blonde looked at each outfit that was there. They all looked good but the only problem he saw was that there was nothing in orange. How was it possible that there was nothing in orange? That was what he asked himself. He decided not to make a problem with it even if orange was his favorite color. He never wanted to leave it since the short conversation he had with his mother. Flashback. When you put Konoha no Kiroi Senko and Akai Chishio no Habanero together, What do you get? He said playfully and cheerfully. You get the orange Hokage TT Ibeo, he smiled as he said it. End of flashback. Even if that memory didn't seem to have any relation to his choice of his favorite color, for him it didn't. He liked to think that his choice for his favorite color was because of the combination that his parents represented. It was for that reason that he didn't want to get rid of the orange, he didn't want the belief he had to disappear, he didn't want the little that reminded him of his parents to disappear. But apparently he couldn't help it, so he decided not to back down on the decision he was about to make. Even if he didn't want to. Have you chosen what you wanted yet? Serafall said. Yes, I already know what I'm going to take. He felt a little embarrassed that she paid for his things, it was very strange for him to be given something. It was even more so for him, that a girl did it. He went to the dressing room and put on the clothes he chose, there was no orange anywhere. It felt strange to him, it was as if he had an emptiness for not being able to use it. He stared at the ninja band he had left it in the pockets of the pants he wore. He was leaving his past behind, this was a new life. A new world, and he will not go back to what he is doing, even if it is not his world. He will never leave aside the ninja path that he wanted to do. He may stop wearing his ninja band, stop using the only thing that reminded him of his parents. But he would not go back on having done it because he was Naruto Uzumaki and he would never give up. I hope I don't look weird in this. I used to never choose anything that didn't have orange in it, and now it's weird not being able to wear it. I'll have to get used to the new style of clothes. Naruto walked out of the locker room, hoping that he wouldn't be seen as weird for dressing like that. When he saw Serafall stand still at the sight of him, he got a bad feeling, he thought he looked bad. But he decided to ask how he looked even if he knew the answer. So, how do I look? He said, trying to seem calm. Serafall wanted to talk about how he looked, but she couldn't do it, her voice wouldn't come out even if she was moving her mouth. He looked very good from her point of view, and it was very possible that all the women would think the same if there were more at that moment. The Uzumaki wore a black jacket with a white shirt, his hair was messy as he always wears it, but somehow he arranged it to make his eyes stand out, which seemed to shine. His marks on his cheeks made him look like a bad boy. He wore gray pants. And he decided to wear black boots that reached his calves. Wow, you look good, said the redhead. She didn't understand much about clothing styles, but the blonde looked very good wearing what he chose. The Mao present could only nod as she couldn't speak clearly. Naruto was glad that he didn't look weird. It was the first time he chose a type of clothing that didn't have orange in it. Wow, it seems that you have already found what you are going to get, right? The shopkeeper had appeared without anyone noticing. Yes, this is what I am going to bring. Hey, won't you make clothes? The shopkeeper nodded, he made several of the styles of clothing that were in the store. Good. Then you won't mind me placing an order. There's no problem with that, you can ask for what kind of clothes you want and I'll give them to you. Although you'll have to do it at another time, I'm going to have to close the store due to certain problems until next week. Okay, I guess I'll have to ask him another time. I wanted to ask him that day, but there was nothing I could do if the store was closed. Serafall was still unable to speak, something rare for her. But it went unnoticed by the blonde and the redhead. The Mao paid for the blonde's clothes that she had with a little shame at not being able to buy them on her own. I should do something for her, she's been helping me since I arrived. But what could she like? The three of them left the place, drawing more attention than usual. If they were already recognized for having a Mao with them, now the women turned around more frequently to look at the blonde. Something that Serafall didn't like, but she hid it since the blonde was ignoring everyone who saw him. They decided to return to the mansion, it was already getting late. It seemed that the day was moving quickly, something that none of them noticed. So they took the route that should take him home. The blonde was unconcerned until he obtained the memories of the clone that was with Sona. They were not a serious problem, but he could not tell Serafall, he could get into trouble if he said it. Hey, why don't you use the magic circle to get back faster? He tried to persuade them. He had to go to where Sona was, and he couldn't go with them right now. But only Rias-chan and I could use it. You know you can't use it, Serafall said. After a moment she managed to speak again, looking at him curiously as she said that. The The blonde had nothing to do in this place and didn't know anyone, because it seemed like he wanted to stay in Lilith. On the other hand, Rias was confused to hear that the blonde couldn't use the magic circle. Did that mean he couldn't use magic? She should ask Sona if she knew about this. If she didn't have any answers, then she would ask the blonde in person. It's just that I forgot something at the store. And it's important. I didn't want you to be delayed any longer by coming with me. Besides, I remember the way back. You guys go first and I'll go later. Serafall didn't seem convinced, but if it was something important, then he should let him go. He might not want many people to see what he's looking for. Okay, let's go back. Rias-chan. Rias followed the Mao. She wanted to talk to Sona about the question that was in her head. If it was faster the better. They entered the magic circle and disappeared from the blonde's sight, who sighed in relief. He didn't think that excuse would work. He shouldn't make Sona wait any longer. So he headed towards the place where she was. Thanks to the clone's memories, it was fun to see how she tried to follow them. He still didn't understand how they got lost. In a very simple way, it seems that it was a good idea to leave her with a clone. With Sona, she was relieved to be able to tell Naruto where she was. The clones she made were very useful. They could be of use to her in many ways, and the best thing was that she could get information about places without being there when they dissipated, as the clone had told her when she had asked him if he had any way to call the original. The bad thing was that he had to do it in front of Kuroka, who stared at the cloud of smoke that the clone left behind when it dissipated. She seemed in shock at what the clone did, making a note not to ask for it to be done in front of anyone else. Well, I guess they'll come get me in a few minutes. Kuroka just continued to stare at where there was supposed to be a person who turned out to be some kind of clone. She couldn't explain how it was possible that it was physical. They were supposed to be just illusions. Only yokai were supposed to be able to use them by having chakra. The similarity in his energy was very similar to chakra. It should be some yokai. But what kind of yokai would it be? That was the doubt she had in her head. She could only distinguish the marks on his cheeks. That didn't tell her much, and that clone hadn't spoken since they were inside. She would have to wait for them to come and get Sona. She somehow liked the girl. Although she hoped her sister wouldn't have a serious personality when she grew up, she preferred her to be a cheerful person. She was still very young and she didn't want her to be a serious person all her life. She wanted to see her smile all the time with her. She was all he had. She was his only family. He didn't want to lose her. He would do anything for his sister even if he hated her for doing something he didn't like. He put those thoughts aside. He didn't want to have those depressing thoughts. Fortunately for her, someone knocked on the door. She could forget about that momentarily. Sona looked happy. It seemed that it was the person who came to look for her. She looked better with a smile than with a serious face. She opened the door and couldn't help but stare at the blonde who had a radical change. She didn't expect that. She had a slight blush when she saw him. She wouldn't deny at all that he looked very good. Although he looked cute when she saw him the first time, she didn't like the orange he was wearing. She could tell that the change of clothes changed his appearance radically. "Hi, you were Kuroka, right?" the blonde said with a smile. Kuroka got a little nervous. The blonde was a bit older than her too, and that smile was doing something to her that didn't seem real. She stopped acting like that and spoke to him. "Yes, that's my name. I guess you're here for Sona, right? Nya. The blonde nodded and wondered why he said Nya at the end of his speech. He shrugged his shoulders. He said Datbeo, so he had no problem with that. There was no need to look for Sona as she was right next to her, looking like she was admiring the blonde's change. While he felt that no one understood the genius of orange, he felt a little offended by being able to feel that. It had been hard for him to leave that color. He was reconsidering being able to use even a little of it. But he already made his choice, so he wouldn't take back his words. He thought that maybe he should get the pendant he won from Tsunade repaired. It was still destroyed, but maybe he can get it repaired somehow. "We have to go, Sona. Your sister is back and she might be looking for you everywhere right now, so we have to go back and quickly." She just ran towards the blonde's back, meaning that she was ready to leave. Naruto couldn't help but have a small smile when he saw her do that. They were saying goodbye to Kuroka, but she spoke before they left. "Wait." The blonde turned to look at her. He didn't know what she wanted, but if she shouted to be able to talk to him it must be important. What's wrong, do you have something to say? He said calmly. Kuroka was having a mental debate about asking him if he was a yokai. She was one and it seemed the blonde was two from the clues she got. But if it was just a confusion and she told him he was one, it could be a mistake to say it. She decided to take the risk of asking him. Yes, it's a question I wanted to ask you. Sure, you can ask me, I'll answer if I can. I couldn't tell much about him, I hoped I wouldn't have to answer a question that was personal. You're a yokai. He closed his eyes waiting for the answer, he wanted to hear a yes. On his part, he couldn't always talk to yokai in these places, and the high-class demons would seek them out to reincarnate them. No, I'm not a yokai. That confused Kuroka. If he wasn't a yokai, how could he sense an energy like chakra? No, it wasn't like chakra. He used chakra and she could sense it. If he wasn't a yokai, then how could he use it? So how can you use it? Only yokai can and no one else should be able to do it. Use it? What do you mean? It's not that you. I mean chakra, I don't know how you can use it. Besides, it's because I am a yokai. Kuroka was glad for the blonde's answer. Even if he didn't let her finish speaking, she had risked talking about chakra. She was thinking about telling him that she was also a yokai if the blonde didn't hurry up in answering. In the end she reconsidered. She couldn't risk it like that, but for some reason she wanted to tell Naruto that she was a yokai. She didn't know if she should risk saying that. It seemed that now there were no problems anymore. He told her that he was a yokai on the street so she could tell him to gain his trust for her affair exchange. Now she only needed to find out what type it was, if it could have the form of a complete human and it doesn't have a notable distinction. She also had some marks on her cheeks, 3 on each side to be more precise. She couldn't find anything that could tell her what type of yokai it was, but that didn't matter to her. For the moment. That's what you wanted to know, right? The blonde had to resort to a lie. He wasn't a yokai, but somehow she had discovered that she could use chakra. He didn't know how or when she managed to find out. It was the best thing he could say at the moment. He had to get back quickly. I should go back to the mansion. I could talk to her calmly if I come back another day. Right now I don't have time. So you were one. I was really confused. I thought you were a demon. Could we talk another time? Nya. She knew she couldn't stay long. It was clear on her face that she was in a hurry, so she asked him to talk about it later and maybe at a comfortable time. She was letting her imagination out, something that didn't happen very often, but she put it aside at the moment. It wasn't important. Of course, I'll be happy to come back to talk about it, but as you can see, I have to go and I'm not in the best of weather right now. Would it be okay if I came in 2 days? He said hurriedly. No problem, I'll be waiting. Nya. She finished telling him with a wink. Naruto caught her attention and she would do everything she could to get his attention. Well, that was all. We'll see each other another time. The blonde had run away, leaving Kuroka with a small feeling that she couldn't fully describe. But she thought she had a very good idea of what she felt. She just had to wait for him to come back and she could confirm what she felt when she was with him. She thought that feeling was very hasty. Maybe it wasn't that and it was just a simple interest. When I managed to spend more time with him I should have my answer. Nya. With Naruto. The blonde was running as fast as he could. Sona was supposed to be in the mansion, not with him. He had to get there quickly but nothing came to mind. Until he remembered what he could do was risky, but it was all he had at that moment. I don't know if I'll be able to use it for long. The last time I used it was with Kurama's help. This time I'm alone. I guess I'll have to risk it all or nothing. He turned to see Sona. She was looking with interest at the sides of the place. She should see everything blurry, but I can't risk her seeing me using it. She would have more questions that she shouldn't answer right now. He decided to talk to her so that she would continue what he was going to tell her. Hey Sona, could you do me a favor? Even without being able to speak correctly because of the speed at which the blonde was going, he tried to speak. What your K kind of FF favor? He could do it with effort, but he succeeded. Could you close your eyes for a few moments? He didn't understand that favor, because he wanted him to close them. Maybe he would move faster and that was why she was telling him that. It made sense in his head so he nodded. Well, it would be best if you held on tighter. This could be very quick and I'm looking for you. It seemed that he was right in what he thought, so he didn't protest at the favor she was asking him and closed them as tightly as he could. Seeing that he closed his eyes, he tried to enter the chakra cloak. It took him a few seconds to do so. His body still hurt from using it, not as much as when he used it the first time, but the type of pain he felt at that moment was much more manageable. So without wanting to exhaust the resistance to pain he had at that moment, he ran as fast as he could with the cloak. As the blonde was running as fast as he could, Sona had a nice feeling. She couldn't fully explain it, but she could tell that it felt warm and somehow comfortable. She was supposed to be going at a fast speed, but she didn't feel it. She didn't want that feeling she was having to go away. It was very nice, but unfortunately it was gone. It was too fast. She didn't understand how that was possible. But she liked being able to feel it. She should go with the blonde more often if she could feel that again. On the other hand, the blonde felt very tired, but he could still stand. Using the cloak wore him out very quickly. Maybe it was because of the power of the chakra, or simply his body couldn't handle the power he had at that moment. He had to train with the cloak instead of just physical training and chakra control. He shouldn't get tired so quickly if he was in a fight. That would be the worst thing that could happen to him. You can open your eyes now, Sona, Naruto said. She opened them and was surprised to see that they arrived in a moment. How is it possible that he could move at that speed? It seemed impossible, but now that she experienced it herself, she could say that Naruto could be the fastest person she could ever meet. How did we get here so fast? I could tell he was possibly the fastest person I'd ever met, but I wanted to know how he did it. That's a secret, she said with the same smile that Kakashi gave her and her tongue hanging out. Sona pouted. It was unusual for her. But being allowed to be so curious and telling her it was a secret was very unfair to her. You should be inside before me. You were supposed to be here and not on the mission you were doing. The blonde refuted mission because to him it seemed almost like harassment, but somehow they had gotten lost. He was beginning to have a smile as he remembered everything that had happened with his clone. It was funny to see how she was so sure of the things she did even when everything was wrong. But she stopped having that smile. It reminded him of when he was a child and the same thing happened to him. They were not the same circumstances, but there was a certain resemblance that he could not let go unnoticed. I think it would be best if you go in first. Naruto was confused. Why would he go in first? But as quickly as the question came to him, the answer did too. Oh, I understand what you mean. You want me to keep an eye on your sister looking for you, and if she does, I have to distract her. That's a good plan. Sona nodded at what the blonde said. It seemed like she could understand her even without giving her many details. Being her friend seemed like a good decision. Now she would only like to read books. They would be the best of friends and the best friend she could ask for. It's not like she had many friends anyway. Okay, time to execute the plan. Ready? She nodded and the blonde slowly opened the door. Moments before with Serafall and Rias. They had returned before the blonde because of the magic circle, although Serafall was still unsure of why he had to return. Maybe he was meeting other girls. She didn't care that he did. She wasn't angry at all. If he wanted to do it, then let him do it. He was just her friend and only her friend, but she couldn't get that little thought of talking to other girls out of her head. Why am I thinking that? He's just my friend. Besides, I just met him. It must be out of curiosity. Yeah, it's just curiosity. He left his thoughts and looked where Rias was. Even if she had said that there was no problem with being with them, he didn't know if she came accompanied by someone or came alone. It seemed that the most correct option was the second one. He never saw someone with her. She wouldn't have run away from home, right? Tell me, Rias-chan, why were you alone when we saw you and Lilith? Now Rias felt cornered. It seemed like her plan always changed course. But this time she didn't know how to avoid this question. She had no choice but to tell the truth, or she could tell a lie that seemed true. She thought that no one would notice the lie. It was her master plan anyway. I was alone because I was given permission to go visit them. He had a confident face when he said this. There was no one who could refute his words, so they couldn't believe he was lying. And they let you go out alone, without anyone supervising you or guiding you? Why, yes, they let me go because no one could accompany me. I had asked Oni-sama and he accepted. He had faltered at the beginning of his answer, but he recovered before it seemed false. Serafall believed her when she said that Serafall had let her go without any problem. She could have done the same with Sona. But letting her go alone was not in her possibilities if she gave him permission. Maybe there was someone watching her from afar. Serafall loved his sister enough to let her go without someone watching her. She was just a child and something could happen to her. Well, I guess you came to see Sona, right? Rias nodded and went to look for Sona. Or at least she would try, she was always around somewhere. So it was hard to know where she could be. The most common place was the library. She headed there hoping to find her, and be able to ask about the blonde. If she didn't get an answer from her, she would have to ask the blonde the questions even if it was harder for him to tell her. The Mao was left alone in the hallway, feeling a little tired. It was strange that she was normally in high spirits and didn't get tired so easily, but she still wanted to rest at that moment. But not before seeing her Satan, so she decided to go in search of her sister. It was at that moment that Naruto entered cautiously, trying not to make too much noise and trying not to be seen by anyone. He would have succeeded if it weren't for Serafall watching him. She had a drop of sweat on her forehead. It looked like he wanted to be a ninja, until he remembered that he was one. Even if he is, it was funny to see what he was doing. It seemed like he was doing it on purpose. Why is he drawing attention to himself if he's supposed to be trying to enter quietly, was the question that was going through the Mao's head at the moment. She decided to remain silent and watch what the blonde was doing. It seemed like he was trying to look at all the sides and points of view possible from his position. Somehow he couldn't see her. Maybe he was at that point where it's impossible for the person on the inside to see what the person on the outside can see. I think I should go where Naruto is. He seems nervous for some reason. Just by looking at him once she could tell that he was nervous. It didn't take much observation, it was very noticeable. Maybe he had done something he didn't want to tell. That should be the reason for being so nervous, but how did he manage to get there so quickly? If it took us an hour when he took me, did he do something to be able to get there just a few minutes after us? The distance he had to travel was long. It was a mystery to her how he got there so quickly. I shouldn't beat around the bush anymore about how I got there, it would be best to talk to him. Just as he said, he approached the blonde. With Naruto. Naruto, after having taken a look at the hallway, could not see anyone. It seemed that he was lucky and would have no problems in executing Sona's plan. He let out a repressed sigh that he had without his knowledge. Why am I feeling nervous? It may be a product of having used the chakra cloak. I was lucky to be able to use it without having to ask Kurama for help. Maybe I should learn Kenjutsu. It had always caught my attention. Besides, I'm sure I would look great. The blonde's thoughts would have continued if he hadn't felt a tug on his pants. Sona was calling him. He was going to answer when unfortunately for the Serafall she had appeared. If he said he wasn't nervous before, now he was very much so. He decided to signal Sona not to move. The older purple-eyed girl could detect that her sister was there. That would be the end of the plan they had and they would get into trouble, or rather Naruto would be the one who would have problems hiding what was happening. It didn't take a genius to notice how much Serafall loved her sister and he had hidden what he was doing from her. It wouldn't be a big problem if it wasn't something dangerous. But what he did was very dangerous and very much so. She could be very angry for not having warned her. Now she was taking a risk with the plan she was making. The blonde came up with an idea that could save them. It was simple but very functional. Nothing could happen if he did the idea that occurred to him, so he decided to do it. He just had to wait for the Mao to get closer and he could execute the idea, luckily for him. Serafall was getting closer and everything seemed to be going as he wanted. At the same time with Graphia. She had followed Rias all the way and was surprised by her endurance for being a child. She might be a very strong devil in the future. She thought she could surpass her brother, but there was no need to get ahead of herself. She could become very strong. She still lacked time and experience to be able to have the power that her brother obtained. She was still a child and there was no need to rush with the power she could obtain. After following her and seeing that she was in Lilith, she wondered if this was the place she wanted to go to. If she had asked Serafall he could have accompanied her, but she couldn't do it. She remembered what he did to her so that she wouldn't run away again while she was at work. She thought that the first thing he should do was finish the work and then he could do the things he wanted without the need for her to do extreme actions. Seeing that she was going everywhere without any path, she thought that this must not be the place she wanted to go. She saw that she had stopped for a few moments and was looking at someone. She turned her head in the direction she was looking. It was the Leviathan. What she was doing there, she didn't know, but it seemed that Rias wasn't looking at her. Maybe there was someone else or something that was near her. Her doubts were gone when she heard that she had shouted someone's name. Naruto. He had never heard that name. Could it be a friend? He wondered. But when did he meet that person and why did he never say it? He had never mentioned having met anyone else. That was strange. He should tell Searsex. That person could be some demon who wants to do something bad to Rias. He shouldn't allow it. He might be rushing to conclusions. Maybe that friend he had was accompanying Serafall. He needed to at least see what he was like. If something happened, at least he would know who was the cause of everything. The Mao had moved and she could see what that new friend was like, or as Naruto was supposed to be called. He didn't seem like someone bad at first glance. Even so, she couldn't trust her. She had dealt with people who seemed good and in the end they weren't, but they always had a dark aura that they tried to hide whenever they could. The blonde didn't have it. She was calm. She could notice it from afar. At least he wasn't a bad person. She found it curious that he had marks on his cheeks. It reminded her of a cat's whiskers. That caused a small laugh. She stopped doing everything she did, even breathing. She had never laughed during her work hours. She was curious to know what the blonde was like. If he could become friends with Rias, it shouldn't be bad. Maybe she should introduce him to Searsex or tell him that her sister enjoys being with the blonde before him. It was very likely that he would get depressed by listening to it and she could see him as some rival for her sister's attention. It would be very funny for her to see him like that. It seems that he had something new to do. He had decided to follow them one last time before returning. He knew that if he was together with the Mao he would know where he wanted to go. He could go at any time to look for Rias in the Sea-Tree territory without any problem. She had to explain where Rias was going to both Zeoticus and Venelana. She couldn't leave this without them knowing. Or she could tell Searsex and have him go on a search for Rias. The second option seemed the least likely. But she was a little bored. Maybe a little fun wouldn't hurt. She saw that they were heading to a clothing store. She had never seen it before. Although it's not like she could go to Lilith every moment, she found it strange that there weren't many people inside or that they ignored the place. That was unusual. Whenever something new opened in Lilith, all the devils would go and look at everything the new place had. Maybe they had already opened before and I had never noticed this place. That was the reason, she thought. Anyway, she didn't have much time to be able to explore Lilith, always had to do something. The fact that she could follow Rias could be said to be luck. She had taken care of the things she had to do and decided to walk around the mansion before heading to where Searsex was, not expecting that it would lead her to hear the escape plans Rias was making. After seeing that the blonde had decided what kind of clothes he was going to wear, he was about to leave. There was no need to stay any longer. And he knew where Rias was going to be. Her surveillance job was over. He didn't expect Naruto to have left at that moment. He wouldn't deny that the change of clothes suited him. He would never say it out loud. Besides, he was married to Searsex. Still, he couldn't help but look at him for a few moments before he left the place. She decided she had had enough of watching. She went to a secluded place so they couldn't see her. She made a magic circle and went to the Grimoire mansion. She went to find Searsex. She wanted to see how it would end if she executed the second option. After all, she also has a sense of fun, a little different, but she had it. He opened the door to Searsex's office and saw him as he had left him. He was tied up with several chains and some straps that were from his waist to his legs. In addition, those chains absorbed magic every time he tried to do some spell to help him take them off. That might not be much of a problem for a Mao. Why didn't he try to take them off? Aside from having those chains, he did take them off. He wouldn't be able to see Rias for a month. For a Siskin like Searsex, that was hell. Or in this case, take him to heaven and be tortured with all kinds of light magic. That was the reason why he wasn't complaining and continued doing the work he had by obligation. Searsex-sama, said the silver-haired maid. What's wrong, Graphia? The Mao, even though he was against having him like this, wasn't going to complain. He didn't want to stop seeing his Ria tan. He would start a war first before not being able to see her. No one has seen Rias Ojo-sama all day, it's possible that she was kidnapped. Those last words were repeated by the redhead. His whole world was collapsing, someone had kidnapped his Ria tan. That was a declaration of war towards him, no one did that without waiting for him to be involved. He quickly stood up from his chair, slamming his desk and shouted. We have to find her. It doesn't matter if we have to start a war with the other factions. The redhead had taken it very seriously. He just wished he could find Rias in time, he should get more people. Maybe Serafall could help me, Naruto is in the C-Tree mansion. Should I ask her for help? The Mao was thinking of several ways to get help and how he could make them cooperate. The silver-haired maid heard Naruto's name again, it seemed like he wasn't a stranger. Sears already knew him, so he wasn't an enemy. She was relieved to know that he wasn't an enemy, the redhead was hard to fool so she could trust the blonde. Sears didn't wait much longer in his thoughts and made a magic circle towards the C-Tree mansion. He would ask for help from all the Mao and all the demons he could. Even if he had to beg for them to do it, he didn't want his sister to be with the fallen angels or the angels at his mercy. If they made him decide he would prefer to be kidnapped by some angels instead of the fallen ones, with them you don't know what could happen. And worse if it's a woman, in this case a girl. But anyway they could be worse than a demon. Graphia, Close Lilith and all the other clans, territories, no one will be allowed to leave the underworld until I say so. The redhead was very upset. He didn't say anything else and left in the magic circle. Back with Naruto. The blonde was waiting for Serafall to get closer so he could execute the idea he had. There were only a few more centimeters left and he could do it. Everything was in order until a magic circle appeared. Serafall quickly identified it. It was Sears. She thought he was looking for Rias, so she stayed next to the blonde. Who was wondering who was in the magic circle, he didn't wait long to find out who it was. He wondered why she came again, could it be that she had some more questions for him or was looking for Rias? It was more likely that he was looking for her, but he didn't know how the Mao could have known where she was. He never asked Rias if she came alone, or maybe he did and completely forgot to remember. If he was honest he didn't remember doing it. It's not like he had a problem with her staying with him and Serafall anyway. I see that the Mao was very nervous and upset. Why is he like this? Did something happen? He decided to ask him the reason for his condition. But before he could speak the redhead spoke. Have you seen Rias? That question was somewhat or possibly very curious. Wasn't he supposed to know that she was here? Although the blonde didn't know that Rias had told Serafall that she had her brother's permission, he thought that he already knew and that was why he had come. Yes, said the blonde and the Mao at the same time. They had put themselves in a firm position and couldn't help but scream, each one had a different thought. It could be some game or joke. And that he would tell them that it was all some act he did with Rias, that was what was going on in Serafall's head. While Naruto couldn't help it since it resembled the screams Tsunade made and when she made them he couldn't refute anything, he had also become upset when he heard a sudden scream. Apart from everything that was happening inside the seal he had awakened the Biju inside him without knowing it. Since he is getting up he may get an unpleasant surprise for him and a very funny one for the blonde. Sears stood still for a moment upon hearing the answer. Wasn't Rias supposed to have been seen by anyone and was she kidnapped by someone? He might have heard wrong, so he decided to check what they had said. Did you just tell me that you've seen her? Yes, they said again at the same time. So do you know where she is? Only the Mao nodded. The blonde had seen her but didn't know where she could be. So Serafall spoke to him. I was looking for Satan, so she must be wandering around while we speak. The redhead just stayed silent. Taking advantage of the silence in which they were, Sona had entered without anyone noticing, something very difficult to achieve being two Mao and the other a ninja. Or it would be if they weren't focused on something else. Seeing that she was already inside she decided to walk down the hall as if she had just passed by the place. Serafall noticed Sona walking and ran to give her a hug, she hadn't seen her all day. There you were so tan. She exclaimed happily. The blonde was looking a little nervous, none of the plans they had made were executed, but in the end everything worked out well. Oni-sama please let me go, there was a hint of pleading in her voice. She was held very tightly in the hug they were giving her. She felt like her bones could break if they didn't let her go in a few more seconds. Fortunately for her, her sister reluctantly let go of her, but she did it. She was complaining in her mind about evil sisters who didn't understand what it felt like to not be able to hug their younger brothers. "Did you see Rias when you were coming here?" the redhead who had come out of his silence asked her. Sona shook her head. She hadn't seen her when she arrived, and she had just entered. "Hey Searsex, why were you so upset when you arrived?" Naruto said to the red-haired Mao. "Oh, it's nothing. It was getting late too. Take Rias back. It was getting late and I didn't know where she was," he said a little nervously with a smile. The blonde shrugged his shoulders. He didn't understand why he would get so upset just because he was a little late. Maybe they had something important to do. The blonde told himself mentally. He had no more ideas about why he would get upset. "Do you want us to help you look for her?" Serafall offered. She knew the whole place, it was where she lived after all. Searsex nodded. He didn't know the whole mansion. He could have gone there and seen some rooms, but he never saw the whole mansion. "But, I don't know the place. Won't I end up getting lost?" the blonde said to the Mao. What Naruto said was true. He didn't know where the places were. How could he move without getting lost? Searsex thought about Naruto using the clones. If he could make more of them, he could search in various places without having to move. It seemed like a useful ability at the moment. He had more ideas on how to make clones like Naruto's that could save him from doing paperwork. "Could I ask him to teach me how to do it?" He was eager to ask, but at this moment he had to look for Rias. Besides, he realized that someone had played some kind of bad joke on him. No, he knew who did it. Unfortunately he couldn't do anything against the person. Or maybe he could. He dismissed that idea. He didn't want to have a worse suffering if he decided to do it. "Why don't you use the clones? They should help you not get lost trying to find Rias," the mouse said to the blonde. Naruto had an urge to punch himself in the face. How could he forget about the clones? Even if they didn't know how it worked exactly, he could use it to get a feel for the place while he searched for the redhead. "Well, now that the problem of Naruto getting lost is solved, shall we start searching?" Serafall said with a smile. Everyone nodded and headed in different directions. The blonde had stayed behind waiting for them to leave. When there was no one else but him, he made 3 clones. They appeared in a horizontal row. "As you know, we must find Rias. If you find her, you must disperse to find her location." "That's all, disperse." The clones nodded, the blonde sighing when they were gone. He couldn't seem to get a break all day. Something always happened and he ended up involved in some way. "I guess I'll have to get moving too." With that said, the blonde embarked on a somewhat short quest, but it was something he had gotten himself into. So he wouldn't mind helping out. With Rias. She was looking everywhere trying to find Sona. Unfortunately she never found her. She let out a sigh of relief when she couldn't find at least a clue that would tell her where she could be. She gave up on her search, so she decided to go back. The problem was going back. She had gotten lost in her search. What was the way? Since she didn't remember where to go, she decided to always go to the right. For some reason that direction seemed the right one. Her instincts had never failed her, so she went to the right. As she went in that direction, she found the library. She had already passed by this place. So it seemed that she was on the right path to be able to return. Now instead of confused, she was safe. Well, I must be near the dining room or near the door. Her security left as quickly as it came. I think I should make a map of the whole place. It seemed like a good idea to be able to have a map. Even if her house was the same size, she had not gone through the whole place as she would if she were at home. She continued to the right. If it worked before, it would work now. She spent about 5 minutes going to the right and she was able to find a blonde guy. It seems that she was very lucky. So she decided to call him so that he could help her get back, or at least she wouldn't be alone trying to get back. Naruto. The blonde turned around and could see Rias. Apparently he was lucky to find her and not his clones. He didn't have to walk far. Rias was near the entrance. So he just had to go back and everything would be fine. Now the problem would be how to tell the others that he already found her. Maybe the clones can help. He nodded at the idea he had. But he stopped when he remembered that Rias hadn't seen any clone of him and she didn't know that he used chakra either. Should I say it or could I do something so that she doesn't see me for a few seconds? That was the blonde's doubt. Although she heard that I can't use magic, maybe I could tell her that I use another type of energy without telling her that I use chakra. No, I don't think I should say that I use chakra for now. He decided to say something that came to mind, without having to say that he used chakra. He could say it, but now was not the time. Hey Rias. Is something wrong? What do I say now? It seemed easier in my head. Do you want to see a magic trick? I hope it works, I can't think of anything else, he thought nervously. But weren't you supposed to not use magic? You know, I didn't even know magic existed a few days ago. He said with a drop of sweat running down his forehead. It's not that kind of magic, it's something that doesn't necessarily require using magic. Do you understand? She hoped he would because he didn't understand what she had just said. She hoped that this kind of magic existed. She didn't want to come off as some kind of liar. He wasn't like that and he never would be. It seemed to have worked as Rias had nodded, so the blonde sighed and said, "Well, watch carefully." The redhead stared as if her life depended on it. The blonde continued and made the hand position he made every time he used the jutsu. Rias was confused to see that he was making a kind of cross with his fingers. Why is he doing that? Her thought didn't last long because a cloud of smoke had appeared. She had forgotten about what she saw before and waited very carefully to see what was supposed to come out. Serafall. She had finished searching for the part she was supposed to, but she found no trace of the redhead. Maybe someone else found her. Should I go with Serafall or Naruto? Serafall can use a magic circle to return, so I think I should go with Naruto. The doubt she had disappeared with what he had just said. Naruto can only walk around the place and doesn't know anything. I should have shown him around the mansion before, she said, embarrassed and scratching her head. She should have shown him around when she arrived before something like this could happen. I'll have to turn around before Naruto goes any further from the entrance. I hope he doesn't get lost around here. With that last thing said, she headed back, hoping that along the way she would meet Sona. She was also helping, but she didn't know where she was. At least she wouldn't get lost along the way, so she could rest easy about that. He walked for about 3 minutes and arrived at the library. It seems he deviated a bit. I ended up using the hallway I shouldn't have, he said with a nervous smile. At least no one will know that you lost me. She couldn't finish because someone had spoken behind her. Know what? Hearing a voice behind her, she couldn't help but tense up a little. She was about to scream, but she was a mouse, so she had to behave like one, or at least try. Are you okay? Asked the person behind the mouse. She turned around and could see Naruto. It seemed that having taken that detour had served her well. Why yes, I'm fine, Serafall said, scolding herself for stuttering. Besides, what I was about to say wasn't important. She finished with a smile to prevent him from noticing that she had been scared by his sudden appearance. If you say so, or by the way, I already found Rias, Naruto said with a smile. But where is it? This is with the original. Original? Yes, in case you didn't notice, I'm a clone. I spoke to him proudly as I said that I was a clone. Hey, so where's the original? They should be at the entrance or near there. They left about 2 minutes ago, so you should be able to catch them. Serafall nodded and walked towards the entrance. Now she just needed to have some sister time with Sona. It seemed like time was going very slow if she couldn't see her sister. It seemed like she was becoming a higher grade Siskin. At the same time with Serafall. The red-haired Mao was almost insane. The reason for that was very simple. He couldn't find his sister anywhere. He was thinking about why both Serafall and Naruto joined Grafia to do this to him. Maybe he couldn't do anything to Grafia, but he could with the blonde and the Mao. If this was also a joke, someone might not want to leave their room for a whole year. The redhead was plotting plans of torture to make him go through that, but he remained thoughtful. What if it's not their fault? If all this is a plan of Grafia and they had to accept, she can be very scary when she wants to. And I know what she's capable of doing. The Mao continued with his ideas while a few meters away a blonde was approaching. He stared strangely at the redhead. He was moving from left to right very quickly. He didn't know what to say at that moment. Should I tell him that we already found Rias? The blonde was with that existential doubt. How can I have doubts about things if I'm a clone? Could it be that I can do more things without having to do what I was ordered to do? He shrugged at such a thought. It was not the time for doubts. Not for now. He should ask the original about several things. He let out a sigh and decided to talk to the redhead who kept moving. I think if I give him a little hit it should be enough for him to react. I hope he doesn't get angry because of the hit. He whispered. Just as the clone said, he decided to give a little hit. He may have gone a little too far, but it would be worth it. Sears continued with his thoughts about how terrifying Graphia was. He couldn't do anything, so he resigned himself. He was about to look in front of him, and when he did he received a blow. Having his defenses down, the blow took him to the end of the hallway, almost reaching the garden. He was able to recover before he could reach the end of the garden. He became serious after that. If it was someone capable of hitting him without him realizing it, then it must be someone very strong. He looked up a little and could see the blonde. He looked nervous. He wondered why he was like that. He left his serious state, returning to his calm state, and spoke to him. "Oh, it was you, Naruto. Don't you know who hit me?" said the redhead, looking everywhere trying to find the responsible. "And no, I haven't seen anyone." He spoke to him as best he could without showing his nerves. Unfortunately for the blonde, Sears noticed the slight hesitation he had. "Why are you nervous?" I asked. "You're welcome, I'm just happy about the news." That was the only thing that occurred to him to make the blow that he had given her seem secondary. "What news?" the redhead asked. "We were able to find Rias, that's why we He couldn't finish speaking because the redhead threw himself on top of him, grabbing his shoulders. He was too close in Naruto's opinion. He tried to push him away a little. But the redhead had more physical strength than he appeared. "Tell me where she is." The mouse spoke to him with great desperation. At the same time that he moved him back and forth, Naruto couldn't speak properly, but he tried anyway. The sigh, at least I was saved from what he could have done to me by giving him that blow. What is his skin made of? It was very tough. Are all demons like this? Or just the Mao? Naruto's clone never expected his skin to be so tough. He thought that demons would be like ninjas in his world, having several abilities. But he never thought that they also had very tough skin. He wondered if demons had any other characteristics apart from that, or if only the Mao were like that. He decided to leave it aside and let the original take care of everything. After all, he was just a clone. And he vanished in a cloud of smoke. Back with Serafall. Serafall had arrived at the entrance and could see Naruto and Rias. The blonde looked a little uncomfortable. He wondered why he was like that. He decided to look at the redhead and he was able to find the answer. Rias was staring very intently at Naruto, maybe too much. Maybe she wants to tell him something. She had a sister, but that doesn't mean she knows everything about children. Besides, Rias was a little unpredictable sometimes. She tried to get closer, and when she was doing so, Rias spoke to Naruto. "If the clone you made wasn't magic, then what was it?" he said with a very fixed gaze, trying to see if he was telling him some kind of lie. That was something called a jutsu. You see, I'm a ninja." He couldn't speak anymore because Rias, hearing ninja, asked him again. "What is a ninja?" she asked him with great curiosity. Now the blonde didn't know how to answer. Should I tell him what the ninjas of this world or mine are like? He preferred to tell him what a ninja from his world was, but they are different from the ones here, from what he could hear Serafall say. Anyway, I have to tell him what the ninjas of this world are like, although what do they do here? Will it be the same as what I do? Luckily for the blonde, Serafall appeared, saving him from the question. He was a ninja, but a ninja from this world may be very different from his. Ninja were people who were dressed in black and threw stars and knives. They also moved very stealthily, and they were from Japan. I could tell you more things, but it would be better if you look it up for yourself. Was what Serafall said as she approached and made Rias try to find out about ninjas in the future. Naruto thought they weren't so different if they took away their jutsus and could use chakra. They would be like civilians, but with a lot of combat experience and apparently always dressed in black. He didn't like that color very much, but it's not like it looked bad on him, so he spoke again. That's what ninjas do, Naruto said, taking advantage of the description that Serafall gave to Rias. Naruto made a note in his head to be able to enter the library and do some research on the ninjas of this place. He wanted to do it since he had heard the first description. But he thought that Serafall lacked information about the ninjas of this world, but it seems that was not the case. But that doesn't tell me anything about how you were able to make a clone. Are you hiding something from me? The redhead spoke accusingly. She looked adorable instead of scary. She shook her head and said, I'm not hiding anything. It's just that I'm a special kind of ninja who can do this kind of thing. He said, holding back the smile that was about to appear. So not all ninjas can do what you do. Naruto nodded at her question and said, that's right, not all ninjas can do it. Does that mean you're a cool ninja? Hearing those words, she remembered when he used to shout that he would be a cool ninja and would have very powerful jutsus. So she told him with a smile and a proud voice. Yes, I'm the coolest ninja you'll ever find. The two girls, hearing the proud voice, had a drop of sweat appear on their foreheads. It seemed that the blonde was very proud of being able to be a ninja. The atmosphere became a little silent, no one knew what to talk about. Except for Naruto, he had the memories of the clone that was with Searsex and he couldn't say it, so he spoke. You know Searsex is about to arrive. I think it would be best to get out of the way. Both the redhead and the brunette gave him a confused look. It only took a few seconds to know the reason for those words. They could hear the footsteps of someone who was running desperately. For some reason he was raising a cloud of smoke as he ran, but they both knew who it was. Naruto had just told them. They listened to what the blonde had said and moved away. The cloud of smoke stopped when it reached the door that was a few meters behind them. When the smoke disappeared they could see Searsex in an agitated and disheveled manner. Are you okay? Serafall asked Searsex. Seeing how he looked like that, it seemed like he had run all the way. I don't think he decided to run all the way, right? The Mao could only nod. He was still trying to catch his breath. It seems he had gotten tired from running or was just anxious. No one knew the answer. It's not like it was something very important anyway. So they left it as something unanswered. Where's Rias? Said the redhead, looking everywhere. Unfortunately for him she wasn't in plain sight. Because when he arrived she had hidden behind Naruto. Hey Rias, why are you hiding behind me? Naruto spoke to her in a whisper. If she had run quickly to hide, there must be a reason for that. Just be quiet, please, I whispered. It was one of the few times she said that word and didn't mean it, but this time she did. Naruto nodded at Rias's request, so he stayed quiet, just hoping he wasn't getting into any big trouble. I hope Onisama doesn't get angry for not telling him where he was, but it's also his fault for not being able to find him when I looked for him. Rias thought. For her, it was also her brother's fault. She had searched everywhere for him and never managed to find him. So he should also be partly to blame, she was sure of that. Rias was next to us, but I don't know where she is now. Haven't you seen where Naruto is? Said Serafall. The blonde tensed a little when he heard his name. Luckily for him none of the Mao noticed. He didn't know what he should say, so he just shook his head in denial. At the same time with Sona. She was helping to look for Rias, but she couldn't give him anything that could tell him where she was. She decided to go back hoping that someone had found her. Why didn't Naruto want to tell me what he did to get here so fast? She said in a whisper. She wanted to know, but the blonde told her it was a secret. That made her want to know even more. She just resigned herself to that. Maybe the blonde would tell her at some point. They were friends after all. Are we friends? She wondered. I never asked her if we were. It was very true that she thought they were friends from her perspective, but could the blonde say the same? She didn't know the answer to that. Should I ask him to be my friend? The brunette had that little question in her head. She really liked Naruto and he might be her only male friend. It's not like she knew any more guys anyway. Being wrapped up in her questions, she hadn't noticed that he was at the entrance. She blinked a little when she saw that he had arrived. And this time she looked carefully and could find Rias behind Naruto. He was hanging on his back. She was a little surprised by that. Why is he doing that? What happened for him to be like that? Even if Sona wanted to know the answer, she couldn't do it now. Her sister had noticed her again. She was starting to get tired of always having to hug her every time she sees her. So before her sister arrived, she ran with all her strength towards Naruto. He was her salvation at the moment. What she didn't consider was that by doing that she pushed the blonde to the ground, showing that Rias was behind him, or rather on his back. There was only a very long silence between all of them until the redhead spoke. "Naruto, do you have an explanation for this?" she said in a firm voice. "Hey, can you tell me that I just found you?" I answered nervously. "No, that's not the correct answer." If the blonde was nervous now, he was even more so. He turned to see Serafall and she was the same as the Mao. He wondered why and just followed her gaze. He could see Sona behind him now. He understood why she was looking at him the same way Serafall was. From his point of view, he was the victim of something he didn't do, or at least he wasn't the culprit of everything. And from the Mao's point of view, the blonde was taking his sisters away. It seems like he won't come out well after that, so he could only make a small prayer to keep living after whatever is going to happen to him. "Wait!" the two girls shouted at the same time. That stopped the two Mao and they turned their attention to their sisters. Seeing that they stopped for a moment, they spoke again. "What are you trying to do to Naruto?" Rias said. "Not much, we're just going to make it clear that you can't steal other people's sisters." The redhead answered and Serafall nodded, showing that she agreed. "Stop. This isn't Naruto's fault, it's my fault," the redhead shouted, standing in front of the blonde. That stopped Serafall and he stared at Rias, because he said it was her fault if it was Naruto's fault for him. "What do you mean by that?" I asked Rias while staring at her. She got nervous seeing her brother like that, but she stopped doing it. It was her fault after all. She had told Naruto to help her and he did it without protesting. So this would be her fault for having involved the blonde in this. "It's because I told Naruto not to tell them where I had hidden myself," I spoke firmly, even if inside I was dying of nerves. The Mao just stared at her and the blonde at the same time. A few moments later he had a smile on his face again and was calm. It seemed that what Rias said had worked and no one would get hurt, so both Naruto and her let out a small sigh. "Well, I guess everything is solved now, right?" he said happily. But on the other hand, a certain older brunette hadn't changed from her initial thoughts. Her sister was still with the blonde and it seemed that she preferred him to her. How is that possible? Was the blonde the one who wanted to steal her sister and it wasn't the books? Right now Serafall had many doubts in her head and she didn't know an answer for that. She felt upset and a little jealous about how her sister preferred the blonde, but she didn't understand why she was jealous. It wasn't much, it was just a little, but it confused her. Is it because Sotan is happy with him? I guess this is all over now that I've found Rias, so I have to leave. Thank you very much for your help. He gave a small bow in gratitude. Those words had brought Serafall out of her thoughts. Now she didn't know how to respond, she didn't know what to do or how to act at that moment. So she just nodded along with a small smile. "Sure, no problem, if you need help you can ask me," the blonde said with a smile to the redhead. The redhead nodded. He had seen very little of the blonde, but with the little he could see he noticed that he was a good person. So it seems that he could trust him at least a little more. "Oni-sama, can I come back another day?" she asked him timidly. She was close to Serafall, so she had taken advantage of the fact that he was in this situation to ask him. She didn't know that by asking to come back with that timidity she had taken her brother to his Siskin limit. So she couldn't deny him. She didn't have enough willpower to be able to speak at that moment, so she just nodded. Rias was jumping for joy now. She could play with the blonde and have more friends. She was the same as Sona. She didn't have many friends in the underworld. She had only met Sona because she was with her sister when they arrived at the Sea-Tree territory. She stopped for a moment to think about her friends, and became a little depressed. He didn't have anyone but Sona and his cousin. He hadn't seen him for several days, so he didn't know where he was. He thought he should introduce him to Naruto. That way he could make everyone friends and be able to be with them in a group, like in one of those weird books with pictures that he read out of boredom, where there was a group of friends who played with cards that summoned monsters, and with their friendship they could beat the bad guys. She had liked that book. For her it was very good. The only bad thing about it was that she didn't remember the name or where she had left it. "I guess I'll have to do a search to find out where it is," she said to herself. "Well, it's time to go, Rias." He gave the warning to the redhead and she nodded, but not before saying goodbye to those present. "See you later, Sona-chan, Serafall-sama, Naruto-kun." He spoke to them with a smile. And he stood next to his brother. The redhead had a small twitch in his eyebrow. How much had Rias and Naruto known each other for her to call him that? It was what he wondered along with thoughts about the blonde being some kind of sister stealer. He thought he should be careful with him before he steals Rias's affection. She was his younger sister and he would always be looking out for her if he had continued with the latter, although he knew he couldn't do anything about what his parents were about to do to his sister. Maybe it would be good to let him be happy before they tell him about that. The Mao made the magic circle and they left the place, leaving Naruto alone with Sona and Serafall. "Hey, aren't you hungry?" the blonde asked the two. Both were about to answer, but their stomach got the better of them. They blushed slightly because of the embarrassment they felt at that moment. So Serafall spoke. "I think we should go to lunch, don't you think?" They nodded and went to the dining room. Night. An exhausted blonde can be seen in the forest. He was wearing only a t-shirt and pants that some servants of the mansion had given him. He had asked if anyone had any clothes that they weren't using or something old. It was so he could use them in his training. He couldn't use the clothes he had obtained that same day, so he was wearing the clothes they gave him. Luckily for him, he had several changes so he could use them without worrying about getting more. I think Kurama exaggerated a bit with this. I guess I deserved it a bit for laughing at him when I saw him with that. He couldn't hold back his urge to laugh when he saw him again. At first the Biju didn't know what he was laughing at. He thought his partner was going crazy or something. Until he managed to see why he was laughing so hard. He had a necklace that put his name on the front in some kind of metal circle and on the back was the seal. Although now he could move in several places and not get bored. He didn't want to have to be with that all the time, so as revenge for that he made the blonde's training much more hellish for the rest of the day. If the blonde didn't do it, he could take control over his body and do something worse to him than he would have preferred the training. So he had no choice but to do what Kurama told him. He was one step away from death and it was already getting dark. "Hey Gaki, we have to talk about something that I couldn't tell you when we arrived." The Biju told him seriously. "What do you want to talk about?" "It's something important. I couldn't tell you because I thought it wouldn't be very important." He told her sincerely. "So I enter the mental space?" "Yes, I think it would be best if you came in." The blonde nodded mentally and decided to enter, not expecting to get a little surprise. Mental landscape. Naruto had entered and could see Kurama a little upset about the necklace he had. It was very likely that he was very upset with him. He thought he should apologize at some point, but not now. At this moment he would enjoy it a little. "Well, since you're here, I have to talk to you about something a little serious that I couldn't tell you, and it seems the old man couldn't either. Don't take this the wrong way, since it was the condition of having obtained so much power. I think you should already know that power sometimes comes with conditions." "I think I understand a little, but what do you mean when you say that with gaining power comes conditions? Can you explain it to me?" "That's what I'm going to do, Naruto. I was planning to tell you when we got out of that weird thing when we arrived, but I was sleepy so I put it aside." She told him in a tired and slightly bored way. "Sigh, I guess I'll never understand how you always manage to be sleepy. Since you're going to tell me anyway, I don't think I see any problem." I answer in a relaxed voice. Yes, whatever. What I wanted to tell you is that, Naruto, do you know what it means to be immortal?" She gave him a serious look when she finished speaking. "Immortal? I think I know a little about that. Aren't they supposed to not die or something?" he said doubtfully. "Since you're not that far off, I don't see any problem in correcting it, but there's one part missing and it's about time. You're probably wondering what this question has to do with it, right? Now that you mention it, yes, it is a bit of a strange question. Wait, that's not what I'm thinking, right?" Kurama just remained silent, implying that Naruto's thought was not wrong. What? How is this possible? It doesn't make sense. How is that supposed to happen? To be honest, I don't know the exact answer to that. I remember the old man had told me, but he didn't tell me how or why. If he were here, it would be possible that you could ask him what happened to find out how this happened. Although if you want an answer without too many foundations, or rather a theory about why, it's possible that it's due to me and the other Biju. I guess I'll have to find out how all that happened, but right now I think I should know what this world is like before anything else. There are a lot of things I don't know and I have the feeling that I lack too much knowledge about this world. You know, I was expecting a slightly more agitated reaction like the one you had a moment ago, but I don't see the problem with this. I'm almost immortal too, or at least as far as lifespan goes. It's true that I would have been more upset if they had told me when I had arrived in Konoha, but right now it doesn't affect me as much. I've grown up and I have experiences in several things and more than anything about what life is like. The war made me grow mentally in a way that I didn't like very much, but I had to do it in order to save everyone. I won't always be a child. I have to grow up in order to survive in this new world. I think you're going in the right direction, to think that before you were just a brat who couldn't throw a simple kunai well. I guess it's like you said, you're growing. I think if Kushina and Minato were here, they would be happy to see you like this. Snort, it seems like I'm getting soft. As punishment for making me soft, I'll make your training more difficult. Oh Kurama. What's wrong, Gaki? Do you think it would be a good idea to tell Serafall the truth? I don't know, but if you think you can trust her, I guess there won't be any problem. Naruto thought about it for a bit. After a few minutes he had decided. He looked at Kurama and said, I know what I have to do, see you Kurama. The Biju nodded and watched as the blonde disappeared from the mindscape. I just hope that being in this world isn't boring. Because I didn't come here just for a simple vacation. With that said, he walked near a cave that was close to where he was. Outside the mental landscape. Okay, I know what I have to do. Naruto said confidently. I just hope he doesn't think I'm lying. He got up from the ground and headed towards the mansion. It wasn't too far away, so it would only take him a few minutes to get there. He estimated that he would arrive in about 5 to 7 minutes. So the whole way he was thinking of a way to tell him without him thinking it was a lie. He went straight to his room. It was too dirty to be able to tell her personally, so after taking a shower he went to the Mao's room. He knocked on the door of the room and could hear her voice. Wait a minute, he said desperately. The blonde nodded even though they couldn't see him, so he waited for a few moments until he heard them approaching the door. Who is it? I'm Naruto, I wanted to tell you something. Is it something important? I asked curiously. Yes, it's something I wanted to tell you and I don't think I can put it aside, I answer a little shyly. Hey, okay, what do you want to tell me? It's something personal, could I come in and tell you? At the moment of saying that, everything could be heard moving at high speed. Naruto did not understand why everything sounded like that, so he just shrugged his shoulders and asked. Hey, are you okay? Why are things sounding like that? It's fine. I'm just tidying things up a bit, you don't have to worry. Well I guess I'll wait a little longer. Don't you need any help? No, I mean your help is not needed right now, please wait a bit. The blonde remained silent, waiting for her permission to enter. Now that he thought about it, this would be the first time he would enter a girl's room. He got a little nervous without knowing why exactly, but he managed to get rid of it quickly. He took a deep breath and could hear Serafall speaking to him. You can come in now. Just hearing that didn't take him long to open the door. And when he opened it he was a little surprised. It was very clean and it seemed like it was shining. It seemed a little strange to him since it was getting dark, so being able to notice that it was like that when it was dark was a great achievement. Well, what were you going to tell me? I said to him with a smile. Naruto hadn't paid attention to Serafall when she had entered, so when he could see her he was petrified. She was no longer wearing the dress she had on now, she was wearing pink pajamas. That color seemed to suit her and she had her hair down. To Naruto she looked very good with her hair down. It's not like with her hair and pigtails she looked bad, but seeing her like that caught his attention a lot. I wanted to tell you something. I didn't know if telling you is a bit complicated to explain, so you might not believe me. I answer when I regain my senses. It's okay if you can't tell me, you don't need to tell me, Serafall said understandingly. The blonde shook his head in the negative and said, it's not because of that, it's just that I wasn't honest with you. What do you mean? Naruto took a breath and spoke again. I mean, I'm not from here. Serafall was confused. She already knew what the blonde had just said. He was from the human world and was in the underworld, so there was no need to emphasize something that was obvious to her. Or maybe Naruto wanted to tell her something different than what she was thinking. I don't think he wants to tell me anything more than that. Although it's strange for him to tell me he's not from here if we manage to find out since he told us how he got here. She didn't know what else to think about what he said a few seconds ago, so she just spoke to him calmly. Naruto, I already knew about that, she said calmly, looking him in the eyes. The blonde on the other hand was baffled. She just told him she already knew about that. It was not possible he hadn't told anyone other than her at this point. What? Did you already know I'm not from here? She said with confusion clear in her voice. Yes, you are from the human world, right? She answered in a confident and convinced manner. Besides, there is no other place where a human could come from. That was the thought that the Mao had. With what Serafall told him at that moment, Naruto was able to understand everything. She thought he was from this world and that he came from the human world. She wasn't wrong about being human, but about being from this world it was the biggest mistake she could think of. He wasn't from that place and she just told him so. Could it be that she doesn't know about the existence of other worlds apart from her own? The blonde was questioning himself. Well, I can't blame her for not knowing, if I myself didn't know about this a few days ago. Now that I think about it, will there be more worlds different from the one I arrive at? He was letting himself be carried away by the strange thoughts he was having as he started to think a little about the subject. I think it would be best not to think about it anymore if I want to keep my sanity. Thinking that there are more places than your own world is somewhat disturbing and a little exciting at the same time. It's a strange feeling. Naruto, are you listening to me? The purple-eyed girl asked him. The blonde reacted to the call. He didn't know how long it took him to think, but if Serafall was calling him he could assume it took some time. Excuse me Serafall, but what were you saying? He said with a small nervous laugh. Sigh, I guess I'll say it again. I was asking you if that was all you wanted to tell me. I finished speaking with a smile. No, that's not what I was trying to tell you. So what is it? This is more complicated to explain right now. Never mind, I have to say it, I know I haven't known her for long. But she's one of the people I can trust the most now, so I do doubt right now I don't think I'll be able to tell her one day. With that last thought he was able to regain the trust he had when he said it the first time. What I'm trying to tell you is that I'm not from here and I'm not referring to the human world, he said seriously. You weren't from the human world. But, if you're not from there, how did you get here? She didn't fully understand what he told her. He wasn't from the human world and had come to the underworld. But he wasn't some fallen angel, much less an angel. So where does Naruto come from? Was the question that was now in her head that was spinning around. That answer completely changes the facts of how I got here, so could I tell you in a safer place? I asked her with the same seriousness as before. I hoped she would agree to hear that in private and not in her room. I didn't know how safe the room was and I preferred to tell her in a place where she might be more alone. It didn't hurt to be cautious with things. I didn't want to be the same impulsive person who had to go through several things to be able to be a more serious person. If there is one thing I could learn from all those who have taught me in my experience in war, it is to stop being so impulsive. And I don't want to make the same mistake again. Not again. But there's no one else in my room but us. And there's no one else going through these moments. Isn't it private enough? I asked him with doubts in my voice. It was at that moment that Naruto stood still for a moment. She was right, they were alone in the place, so this place would be a private place. You're right, I guess it's because I'm a little nervous. But if it's not too much trouble, don't you know of a spell that will make the noise not come out of this room? Yes, I know, it's easy to do. I am a Mao after all. I am a very powerful devil, she said proudly and smiling. A few seconds passed after what Serafall said. The blonde could see what made a magic circle appear in his hand and said a few words. When he finished saying them he could see that a kind of transparent field appeared that grew until it filled the entire room. Wow, I wonder if I can also do that with Fuinjutsu. He whispered. Seeing that it was very convenient to be able to do that, he wondered if Kurama knew of any seal that managed to do that. Fuinjutsu. What is that? Unfortunately for her, Serafall had heard the whisper. It's not like she couldn't hear him wrong since it was just them and the place was quiet. There was no need to have great hearing to be able to hear what the blonde said. Huh, he managed to hear me. But I didn't say it very loud. The blonde didn't know how he could hear him. But right now he had to answer the question that had been asked of him for saying too many things in the room. Bravo, Gaki. You already made it so that I managed to find out more things about our world. You know, if she wasn't the one who could hear that, I would tell you to kill her, or I would try to do it myself. But, since she has helped us since we arrived, I guess I could let it go. But don't think you have to tell everyone you meet about this. Learn to keep quiet for a moment before I force you to learn it. Understood? Kurama told him seriously. Naruto didn't know that he was listening to the conversation, but he was right about that. So he could only nod mentally. Fuinjutsu is something I could tell you after what I'm trying to tell you mainly. So could you listen to what I'm going to say? Okay. So could you explain to me what you just told me? Okay, but this might be a bit long. So prepare yourself for what I'm going to say. Serafall just nodded at what Naruto said. Even if this was a bit long to explain, she was very curious about what he was about to say, so she focused as much as possible and listened. Time skipped 30 minutes later. And I think that would be all about how I got here. The blonde didn't speak anymore since Serafall was shocked and seemed to believe every word he had just said. Wait, how is that possible? The poor brunette was in a mess of her head. She knew there were several dimensions, but she didn't know about the existence of other worlds. That disturbed her a little. Knowing that there could be more powerful beings than those that already exist in her world didn't sound very nice to her. And at the same time, she was a little curious about how different those worlds could be from hers. This is a little weird, but I can't help but feel curious when I hear about other worlds. It's a strange feeling. Hey, Serafall, calm down a bit. There's no need to get all worked up just because I'm telling you that there are more worlds than you possibly didn't know existed until a few minutes ago. Besides, I don't think all people can travel between worlds easily. Naruto spoke calmly, trying to calm the Mao down from the mental chaos she was having. That helped her to compose herself and speak without stuttering again. But, if it is as you say, how could you go from your world to another? She said, looking him in the eyes. Naruto couldn't find a way to tell him that he was sent there by the Rakudo Sennin. He still didn't have enough confidence to tell him everything about him. So he decided to ask his always reliable companion for a little help. Hey, Kurama. And now that I'm supposed to answer him, if I answer honestly, I'll tell him about the old man. And I don't think I should say it for now. Could you help me a little with this? Normally I wouldn't help you in these cases since you've cornered yourself into this, but I guess I'll help you this time. Although, I don't think I have any answers that can help you right now. Now that I do this, it's a situation I don't know how to get out of. Why is it so difficult to talk to Serafall? I don't understand. Normally I could talk to everyone in a simple way. But, for some reason it's not the same with her. I don't know what's going on. Hey, I think I already have something that might help you get out of this situation. But, don't expect it to be something that will work and you'll have to do everything else. It's something that came to me out of nowhere, but I think it will work at least a little. Just tell him that you had died. That might help what you can say. Now, I'm going to sleep, so don't bother me. Sigh, at least I have a little idea, but how am I supposed to say something with my death? Is there any logic to that? It took the blonde a few seconds until he managed to understand what Kurama possibly wanted to tell him. So without further delay he began to explain. Well, how I was able to get to that place I told you about is due to a certain event that had to happen to me. And let's just say it wasn't a good one. Naruto said, a little embarrassed. What happened that allowed you to get here? The purple-eyed girl asked him with great curiosity. Well, to put it simply and directly, I died. She answered, looking away since Naruto didn't know how much longer he could hold out saying that while looking her in the eyes. What? What do you mean you died? How did that happen? Why did you have to die? The Mao would continue asking, but Naruto made her stay silent by putting his finger on her lips in a silencer and speaking to her calmly. That's something I did for a friend. My best friend. So I don't regret doing it. Since I had made a promise and it was a goal I had set for myself. And I never break a promise and much less abandon my path. I already said it before, right? She finished speaking with a smile and a happy expression. And I know that there are still some questions that you surely have left to answer, but I will tell you when the time comes. So let's just continue as if you had never known this, okay? The Mao nodded at the blonde's proposal. He hadn't known her for long and she was telling him something that was surely a delicate subject for him. So she wouldn't pressure me to answer all her questions and would settle for the answers she got that night. The blonde, seeing that Serafall nodded, removed his finger from her lips, which had a small, imperceptible mark in sight. Oh, that's right. Before I forget to ask about this, do you know what place it was where I arrived the first time? Naruto wanted to know if she could at least know the name of the place, and even if she didn't know it, he would try to find out what the name of that place is. Yes, I know what place you're referring to, and I must say that it's extremely strange that you didn't die from being there. Why is it strange that he didn't die there? The blonde asked doubtfully. It's because, in that place, a human shouldn't even last a few seconds before disappearing. How is it possible that they disappear in less than a few seconds? It's because the place you arrived at is called a dimensional rift. And anything no matter what can disappear if it doesn't have the proper magical protection to pass through there. Since that place is literally nothing. Nothing. How can a place be nothing? To be honest, I don't really understand what the dimensional rift is exactly, but it's a connection between Earth, Heaven, and the Underworld. I don't know much more than that, but it's still surprising that you were able to survive for so long. The normal thing would be to disappear in that place. The blonde was a little upset when he heard about that. Now that he knew where he had arrived at the beginning and that it was that place, if it could be called that. He was a little worried about all that. More than anything because Kurama had detected something that was watching them both when they were in the dimensional rift. Maybe he should ask if Serafall knew about that. Hey, Serafall, do you know if there's anything living in that place? I asked her, a little nervously. The Mao became nervous when she heard the blonde's question. Why do you ask that? Did you find something there? She expected him to tell her that he was just curious and that he hadn't met anyone in the dimensional rift. Well, not exactly, I didn't encounter that thing or whatever it was. I could only feel it when I was about to leave the place. Was it a bad thing that I encountered it? Well, you could say that, it's not a good thing to meet them, I answer nervously. They. Who are they? I'm referring to the Infinity Dragon Ophis. And the Great Red. You should never get close to them, much less have a fight with any of them. They are the strongest beings that can exist in the entire world. No Mao could face Ophis unless we gather many ultimate and high-class demons together with the Mao. And an army to be able to face Ophis, but even with all that I don't know if we would be able to do anything against her. He said seriously. But what about Great Red? Could they do something against him? Serafall remained silent, which alerted the blonde a little. How powerful must this, Great Red, be? Naruto had faced Kaguya. She was a being that could be considered a divine being and already had a little experience in a confrontation against what can literally be called a god. I can't answer that. I don't even know if we could make a scratch, the Mao whispered. Is he so powerful that they couldn't do anything to him? Naruto asked with a bit of surprise, while mentally asking his partner a question. Hey Kurama, do you think you could take on that great red guy? I couldn't answer that, Gaki. I could only feel the power of the one who was watching us, but I couldn't tell which of the two it was. Anyway, I'm not worried about those dragons, I'm the most powerful being that can exist and some lizards aren't going to beat me. Well, at least you were honest. But, if I couldn't use your power when I managed to face them, do you think I could do something? Naruto asked calmly. For some reason he felt like he shouldn't be afraid of those dragons they were talking about. If we look at your current self. I don't think you can do much, but maybe in the future you should be able to deal with anything without needing to use my power for everything. The blonde just remained thoughtful. Although those dragons seemed to be the strongest in the whole world and Kurama had told him that he could face anything that comes his way, then he shouldn't be worried about not being able to reach their level. He gave a small nod and listened to Serafall's answer again. Yes, Great Red is the strongest creature that can exist, there is no one who can confront him. And besides, he goes all over the dimensional rift, so it is strange that you have not encountered him if you stayed in that place for a while. She said, looking at him with her eyes half closed. How curious, don't you think? Naruto answered calmly to the indirect question that the mouse sent him. Even if inside he was a little nervous about that observation that she gave him just by saying that little information. It seems that having the title of Mao is not just decorative, the blonde thought. He didn't know how it was that with so little information that he had given him. At least she's not an idiot. Hey Gaki, if you want to have her as one of your women, I give you my approval. Kurama said mockingly at the end. Wait, what do you mean one of my women? Come on, you know what I mean. Isn't that every boy's dream anyway? Hey, I don't know what kind of person you think I am, but I'm not one of those who wants to have many women with himself. I answer him a little annoyed by what the Biju said previously inside him. Sure, whatever you say Gaki. You say that now, but when the time comes I don't think you'll be able to keep those words. He spoke mockingly and let out a small dry laugh at the end. Yan, I want to go to sleep, so do what you want. I'm not your advisor in love. I'm a being of great power who must. Kurama couldn't speak anymore since Naruto cut his mental link with him. And he returned to the conversation with Serafall. Hey, look at the time. It's a little late, don't you think? I should go before it gets dark. See you tomorrow, good night. The blonde didn't give the brunette a chance to speak before he left the room. So she just resigned herself to Naruto leaving the room. I wonder what Fuinjutsu is supposed to be. Serafall whispered. Naruto had told her that he would tell her what it was, but he left before she could give her an explanation. Maybe he'll tell me tomorrow. Leaving her questions aside, she proceeded to go to sleep, not thinking that the things that were coming in the future would not be something she expected to happen. With Naruto. Naruto had arrived at his room in a bit of a hurry. He had left the Mao's room at that speed because he didn't want to say more about what he knew, not for now. Sigh, at least I don't feel so bad about myself anymore for lying about where I come from. He spoke in a relieved manner. You know that to be a ninja you had to lie, right? Hey, weren't you sleeping? I do what I want. But to answer your question, I was sleeping and for some reason something woke me up. Kurama said seriously. That's weird. I guess it can't be impossible. Just go back to sleep, I'm going to do the same too. I finished speaking with a yawn. Today was a tiring day, still, I think I like this place. He whispered. Unknown location. This place is strange, said a voice in the darkness. He was in some kind of strange room and everything around him was darkness. If I remember correctly, I should be dead, again. I didn't think I would end up reincarnated into several people. I guess I'll continue this journey with this person again. After finishing speaking, he walked off in an unknown direction, disappearing into the darkness of the place, but not before saying one last thing. I hope this isn't boring, Naruto. The next day. Serafall's room. The Mao was fast asleep and hadn't realized it was almost afternoon. Although, it's not like she cares about being late for work. Oni-sama, please open the door. It was Sona's voice that sounded a little angry. On the other hand, Serafall did not respond to her sister's call. Something strange if you knew the Mao since her sister was born. It was something strange, or rather you could say impossible, for her to ignore her sister. If that happened, most or everyone would believe that it was someone else. But in this case it was not like that. The Mao did not respond to her call because she was simply asleep. Something as simple as sleep could make her manage to put her sister aside. Hey, Sona, I think it would be best to leave her alone, maybe she's asleep. A second voice appeared that everyone knew, and it was Naruto's. But, if you don't get up, you won't be able to take me to the place you promised to go to, she said with a discouraged voice. Where were they going to go? Hearing that question, little Sona had a slight smile that didn't go unnoticed by the blonde. The library, Sona replied happily. The way she had answered the question made Naruto have a small bead of sweat running down his forehead. He had never met someone who would be so happy to go to a place where it was full of books. They were the one thing he never had a good compatibility with. It's not like he didn't learn anything from reading, but he got bored very easily when reading books. I can't let go of the information about this place right now. I only know certain things and the name of the place where I appeared. Well, I don't think there'll be any problems with me taking her. The blonde thought. Would it be okay if I took you? He spoke softly. But why would you take me? Sona asked. Because, we are friends, right? And friends always help each other in these moments. So I'll take you to that library you want to go to. He finished with a smile typical of him. Sona just stared at Naruto. She had a few doubts about whether they were really friends, but with this confirmation from the blonde she could say that she had made a friend for sure. So she was a little happy and said to him looking into his eyes. Well, then can we go now? Sure, just let me make some notes for your sister. And then let's go, okay. Sona nodded and left the place towards the entrance with a small smile that no one could notice. Well, that was easy, now where is some paper and ink? Time skip 10 minutes. I guess this should be enough to tell you where we're headed. I hope you read it and don't despair about not finding Sona. Naruto left the note he was writing inside the room by throwing it under the door. He then headed towards Sona so they could go to that library even if he didn't want to go. With Sona. The little black-haired girl was happy even if it wasn't noticeable by having that look it would be that she always carried with her. Although, inside she was a little sad for not being her sister who was going to take her. She had promised her, but apparently she had forgotten her promise. Maybe she was very tired of doing her job and forgot, she thought in a depressed way. At least Naruto can take me. The state she was in didn't last much longer and she replaced it with joy. Maybe it won't be her sister who will do it, but the friend she made and in whom she felt she could trust even if she had seen him for a very short time. She thought about Naruto for a bit and came to a conclusion. She believed that the blonde was one of the coolest people she knew or possibly the coolest. And the best thing of all was that they were friends, but even after those thoughts she still had questions about him. While she felt that she could trust Naruto for some reason she was curious about his life. She had a feeling that she would have no regrets if she could find out about his story. Hey Sona. The purple-eyed girl would still be in her thoughts if it weren't for the scream she heard. She raised her head slightly, meeting Naruto who was running towards her. Well, at least he didn't take long. Sona thought. Are you ready to go? Naruto asked when he reached the brunette. She nodded and the blonde walked out of the mansion with her. It's true I forgot to ask you, but where is the library? He spoke to her with genuine doubt. I forgot to tell you. It's in Lilith. But, I don't know where it is exactly. She answered a little embarrassed. That's why Oni-sama was going to take me there. Relax, I think I know how we could get to the library. But first, one last question. Why don't you go to the mansion's library? Serafall told me there was one here. That's because the book I'm looking for isn't there. So I should be able to find it in Lilith's library. I answer quickly and calmly. Well, that makes sense. Naruto whispered. Okay, get on my back. We're going to go as fast as possible before Serafall gets worried about not seeing us. Time skip 30 minutes later. Somewhere in Lilith. Nei-san, where are you? A little girl wondered. The little girl was in her room. It wasn't the most comfortable one could be in and the place was a little run down, but that didn't matter to the girl. Now her priority was to find her sister. And she hoped to do it soon since she was hungry from not having eaten anything for 2 days. Nei-san, she called loudly trying to make her sister hear her. Fortunately for her she succeeded since the door was opening and a girl with black hair and a kimono entered. Calm down Sharon, I'm here. Is something wrong? Asked the girl who had just entered. Nei-san, I'm hungry. Said the little girl named Sharon. She touched her stomach while making a hungry sound. Relax, I was able to get some food before we got here. Get changed and come to the dining room so we can eat together, okay? She said in a soft and cheerful voice. The little girl just nodded and the older sister proceeded to leave the room. Sigh, at least this time Sharon and I can eat something. She whispered. She was still a minor and did not have her parents. So she was in charge of taking care of her sister. Even if it was very complicated she would do everything for her sister since she was the last family she had left. She would have tried to go to Kyoto to be with the yokai. But her sister was very young and she did not know if she could manage to take her there. So the only thing left for her was to stay in the underworld and try to lead a life at least as normal as possible. I hope you like what I'm going to prepare. I'm not the best cook, but I'll try. She said with conviction. She didn't have many ingredients, but she could make a stew. That was the little her mother taught her in the kitchen, and she didn't know many more things to do. At least now she can eat a little of what I can cook. Sigh. It was difficult to get food when she was younger. One good thing that happened was that her sister had grown enough to be able to eat some of the normal foods and not what a baby should eat. Nei-san, Nei-san, Sharon called to her older sister. Having left a few seconds ago after getting changed. Is something wrong? He quickly responded to her call. What are you cooking? He asked with curiosity evident in his eyes. That look in his eyes pleased her because that way she could be a good older sister and teach her little sister things. This is something I learned thanks to Mom helping me prepare it a few years ago. So I'm sure you'll like it. She finished speaking with a smile and rubbing her sister's head. Mom, can I help you do it? He asked with the same look in his eyes, but if you were a little observant you could notice that there was a little happiness in them. Yes, it shouldn't take much longer to finish, so can you play for a while I finish? I answer happily. Okay. With the last thing Sharon said, she went to play for a moment in the small dining room. The dining room was a simple one, a table with 4 chairs and a small dresser that was in front of the table that served as decoration and sometimes to put something on. Little Sharon was in a dilemma when she went to the dining room. She didn't know what she could play while waiting for her sister to finish making the food. What can I do? Was what she kept asking herself. It didn't last long since she had thought of what she could play. I know. The white-haired girl ran to the small dresser. The one in front of the table had about 3 drawers and in one of them there were a few sheets of paper and some crayons. So Sharon went in search of them. She checked the first one but there was nothing. She opened the second one and was able to find a few crayons. When she opened the third one she didn't find the sheets she was looking for. Why aren't they here? She asked herself with doubt. She remembered having left them there, but now they were gone. I think I should ask Nei-san if she has seen them. She ran to the kitchen which wasn't very far away, just walk a little and you could get there in a moment. She approached her sister and pulled the bottom of the kimono she was wearing. Nei-san, she asked a little shyly. Her sister turned to look at her and asked. Do you need something Sharon-chan? I asked with a smile. The albino girl nodded and spoke to him again. Yes, have you not seen the leaves that were in the drawer? I don't remember seeing them, but have you checked the room yet? The little girl just shook her head, and decided to go to her room in search of the leaves that should be somewhere. When he reached the door of the room, he quickly opened it and began to look everywhere for the sheets he needed at that moment. I can't find them anywhere. He whispered. She only needed one place to look, but unfortunately she couldn't get to that place. So she decided to use a chair to be able to climb up and see if she could. Being on that side, now the problem was that she couldn't easily move the chair she needed. It seems that a solution led her to a new problem. She couldn't continue with that since she heard someone calling her. Sharon-chan, it's time for lunch. Little Sharon just stayed a little sad at not being able to do what she wanted, but at least she could eat what her sister was preparing. I'm coming. On the other side of Lilith. 5 minutes later. Sigh. Well, we're here, now you can let go Sona. Naruto spoke to his little companion who was on his back. Okay, but I don't remember where the library was. You told me you might know where it is. So where do we have to go? Sona asked. I told you that, and I don't know if she'll be able to find out, but it doesn't hurt to try. And if she doesn't know where it is, all that's left is to ask the people who pass by here. He finished speaking, looking around him. There were several people walking around the place, so it wouldn't be that difficult to get some direction they should take. Okay, and first of all, who is she? Don't you remember who you met the other time when you and my clone went somewhere else? He said with doubt in his voice. Please don't make me remember that, she said a little dejectedly. The blonde just rubbed her head a little and spoke to her. Okay, if you don't want me to talk about it anymore, I won't say it anymore. But, we should ask Kuroka if she knows where we should go. Okay, she finished with a smile of her usual kind. Sona nodded and she and the blonde headed towards Kuroka's house. Not without having some problems, they didn't remember where the house was. At least they didn't exactly have certain memories about the path they had taken, so they decided to continue on. Time skipped 10 minutes. Let's see, I think we had to go this way, Naruto spoke to himself. Although the blonde had already gone down those roads, it's not like he did it normally, he was going in a hurry the time he went and he also left very quickly. So he couldn't remember the entire way to get there. Anyway, it wasn't very complicated to find the house, it was small in size, it seemed to him that it was a little bigger than the apartment he had. And it was one of the houses that weren't so well treated. He had certain clues to be able to know which one it was, so if he manages to remember just a little he could know where to go. Naruto, said the brunette who was next to him. The blonde turned to see her and spoke to her. What's wrong? Sona pointed to the side and Naruto moved his gaze to where she was pointing. Wasn't that the house? Naruto looked around for a few seconds and nodded. The house they were looking at was the one they were looking for. Now all they needed was for Kuroka to be inside and be able to help them. If she wasn't there they would have to go back and try to find the library they were looking for. Come on, let's see if he's home. After finishing speaking, both Sona and he went to the house and stood for a moment at the door. And now, how can we ask them for help without it sounding like we're only looking for it for this? Naruto asked himself. I guess we should stay a few minutes as if it were a little visit and then ask for directions, little Sona said analytically. Wow. She is very smart for her age. Could it be that some demons can mature mentally faster? Or are you just an idiot who can't do much? Ha ha ha, very funny Kurama. I just told the truth. It's not my problem if you get offended. Sigh. Okay, let's leave this for later, right now I need to be outside and not talking to you. Are you going to knock on the door? Sona asked, staring at him as she noticed that he had remained still for a few seconds, but not in a simple way. It was as if he was not conscious at that moment. Maybe she should investigate Naruto a little. Every time she was with him something happened that caught her attention. Yeah, I was just thinking about something, Naruto answered calmly. The blonde knocked on the door and waited for someone to answer his call. Hello, the voice of a smaller girl could be heard behind the door. She opened the door a little, revealing her eyes. They both knew that Kuroka lived there, but they didn't know that there was a girl there too. Or they just left that detail aside when they were there. Hi, Naruto answered cheerfully. He had dealt with children before and had one right next to him, so it wouldn't be too difficult for him to talk to her. We're looking for a girl named Kuroka. Haven't you seen her? He asked her in the softest way he could. If he spoke in a serious way he could scare her, and that's not what he wanted at that moment. Why are you looking for her? I asked in a curious voice. We are friends of hers and we wanted to know if she was around. Look. The one next to me is Sona. The aforementioned nodded as if to imply that that was her name. And my name is Naruto, could you tell us your name? She finished speaking to him with a smile. The little girl behind the door was silent for a few seconds and spoke again. My name is Sharon. So Sharon, huh? Naruto whispered. So, tell me Sharon-chan, could you tell us where Kuroka is? It's urgent to know where she is. He asked her calmly. Little Sharon fell silent again and spoke a few seconds later. Why are you looking for my Nae-san? Oh, so you were Kuroka's sister. Well, I think I already answered your previous question. Could you tell us if she's at home or out? Naruto asked happily and then calmly. Hey Naruto, I don't think he wants to tell us anything, Sona whispered to him. Don't worry, Kuroka must have told her not to talk to strangers and she's taking a risk by just telling us her name. We just have to talk to her a little more and she might tell us where she is. I answered her the same way. Sona nodded and just waited for Naruto's plan to work. My Nae-san is sleeping, but do you want me to call her? I asked them with a shy voice. We would appreciate it if you could do it, Sharon-chan, the blonde replied with a smile. The little girl closed the door for a moment, leaving Naruto and Sona waiting outside the house. Well, we just have to wait. I told you so, didn't I? Sona just stayed silent and waited with Naruto for someone to come out again. Sharon. The albino girl was walking towards the bedroom they had in their house. It was the only one, so she shared it with her sister. Not that she complained, she liked being close to her sister. It's all she had and her sister was always good to her. He walked to the door and opened it slowly. He could see his sister sleeping peacefully in the bed, which was a little old, but it was comfortable so he had no complaints about her. She approached her sister and shook her a little. "Nei-san, Nei-san. There's someone looking for you." Kuroka stood up slowly and managed to hear her sister telling her that someone was looking for her, but she didn't know who it was. "Wait, Sharon-chan, who's looking for me?" he said lazily. "A boy named Naruto, he told me that you knew him." That made Kuroka get up as fast as she could. And that she was moving from one side to another, that was strange to Sharon, because her sister was walking everywhere. That was what she was wondering. She shrugged her shoulders. It didn't seem like it was something serious, rather she noticed her sister anxiously and a little nervous. She started to think a little and came to a small conclusion. "Nei-san, isn't the boy named Naruto your boyfriend?" he asked with his head tilted to the side and looking into her eyes. "Boyfriend? No, of course not," she said, blushing a little, but it went away quickly. And she spoke to him again. "He's just a friend I met yesterday. He told me he'd be back in a few days nya, but it seems he came today." "Sharon-chan, can you let me in? I'll be there in a moment." The albino nodded and went to the front door of the house. With Naruto and Sona. They were both a little bored, they had nothing to do and they were in the middle of the street so they couldn't do much. "How much longer will it take?" asked Sona, who seemed a little desperate. "He should be here already, but if he doesn't come in a few minutes, it would be best to leave." The brunette was about to answer, but the door of the house opened. Showing the little girl who was called Sharon, she had white hair, something they couldn't notice because from the door they could only see one of her eyes. They were hazel-colored, she was very small so they didn't know how old she was supposed to be if she could speak normally. His thoughts drifted away when he heard her speak to them. "Nei-san said you can come in." The two nodded at the same time and walked in. "Well, now we just have to wait for Kuroka to appear." Naruto was calm, he just had to wait a little longer and he would be able to know where the library was. "Sorry for the delay nya," said the newcomer Kuroka. "No problem, we won't be expecting much longer in here. Right, Sona?" The aforementioned woman nodded. "Well, what brings you here nya?" "Hey, can't anyone just stop by here to visit?" Naruto replied. "I would have believed that if you had visited tomorrow, since you had said that you would come in a few days to finish talking nya. But, you came before that. So in conclusion you were looking for something, am I wrong?" the yokai said analytically. Well, Sai, you got it right. But how did you know I needed something?" Kuroka had a small giggle making Naruto not understand why she was laughing. She stopped laughing in a few seconds and spoke again. "To be honest, I was just following a hunch. But, you made me confirm it. And since I know what you wanted to do by coming, tell me, what do you need nya?" It seems that Kuroka cannot be fooled, at least she will not easily fall into any trap that they try to set for her. The blonde thought quickly. "Well, since we went straight to the point of this, I wanted to know if you knew where a certain place was." The moment he finished speaking, a serious atmosphere was felt that everyone noticed except the albino who was distracted looking somewhere else. "Oh, and what are you looking for nya?" I asked, continuing with the serious atmosphere. "It's a relatively simple thing if you've lived here for a while, for us that's not our case as you may have noticed," he said pointing at Sona and himself. "Could you say what you're looking for instead of going around in circles nya?" He spoke in a slightly desperate manner, removing the serious atmosphere that existed. "Sorry about that, now my question is, do you know where the library is?" Time skipped 30 minutes later. "Finally!" Sona exclaimed. They had been walking for several minutes after asking where the library was. Right now she was rethinking if it was a good idea to go with Naruto instead of going with her sister in a magic circle. She left her regrets behind and looked at the image that the library had in front of them. It was a combination of the old and the modern. A little complicated to describe, but it still looked very nice. Now they just had to go inside and nothing else could bother them. Come on, hurry up, Naruto. Calm down, We're almost in, there's no need to despair, Naruto said calmly. Well, it was a bit long, but at least we got there. I hope I can find things that will help me in this place. The blonde and the black-haired girl entered the library, but not before having to go through some kind of strange thing for Naruto. If you ask him, it was like a door frame with a red light above it and it made little sounds. He didn't understand what use it had there, so he simply shrugged his shoulders and continued on his way with Sona. They separated for a moment to look for the books they needed. It was Sona who had proposed that idea. For some reason she didn't want the blonde to see those books, that made him a little strange. Even so, she continued with what she wanted to do from the beginning. Look for something that would help her understand the things in this world. She was lucky that her language and the one used in the underworld were similar. It seemed more like her type of writing but in a more advanced way. He decided to go to a hallway that said history. That seemed like a good start. What better than to know a little about the history of the place, before I start reading about the other things. I hope I don't fall asleep in the middle of this. Naruto began to read what caught his attention the most, especially the titles since the books had no more variation than the colors they had. He came to one that caught his attention because of the title it had. Ninjas. I think this is what Serafall was referring to. I suppose reading a little about what they did in this world wouldn't be bad. He whispered. Somewhere in the library. We can see the blonde, staring at the ninja book he had in his hands. For some reason it felt strange for him to hold it. He thought that this was happening to him because he was a ninja and he was looking at the history of other ninjas. Although he couldn't fully explain what he was feeling at that moment, and neither could he explain why he thought that, the strange feeling didn't go away. This book. There's something strange about it since I touched it. I don't understand. The blonde repeated to himself in a low voice. Kurama, don't you feel it too? I don't feel anything strange about that book. It must be something of yours. Why don't you open it and start reading that thing? Maybe it will help you see what a ninja is like. The Biju answered in a tired manner. Hey, are you okay? I can hear you, weirdo, the Uzumaki asked with concern. I'm fine Gaki, it's just that for some reason I'm sleepier than usual. Hey, I don't know how long you'll be here so I'll take advantage of sleeping while you look for something. See you later. With that last thing Kurama was the one who cut the mental link. That was weird. Well, I guess it's nothing serious. Maybe having so much power makes you sleepier. He whispered. At the same time he wondered about that doubt that remained in his head. The blonde continued forward next to the ninja book and on a few shelves behind he managed to find a book on the history of humanity. It seems that this library had exactly the books he needed. He found it a little strange, but still he just shrugged his shoulders and continued on his way trying to find something that would help him learn more about the place he was in. While he knew he could rely on Serafall now, she couldn't always be by his side. That thought somehow didn't please him. He dismissed the feeling he had at the thought of that by putting it aside. The next thing he could find was a basic book on magic. He opened the book to see if it had any spells. I wonder if I'll be able to use magic. I don't think I'll be able to, but I have nothing to lose by trying. He thought with a bit of excitement. Unfortunately for the blonde, that book didn't have any spells. It simply told how magic could be used and what magic was. Along with a few more definitions. Well, it seems that not everything always goes as one wants. It doesn't matter, I can use chakra anyway. I don't think it's necessary for me to use magic. He said with a little disappointment. The blonde was not wrong. For him it would not be necessary to have to use magic, only right now he did not know his future. Even if the book didn't have any spells, he started reading a little of the content to know at least something more about magic, although right now he only knows how to use chakra. He could try to gain knowledge about magic, it was something unknown to him. So he thought it would be necessary to know at least some things about it. Unfortunately for him, he didn't understand much, if anything. This is a bit boring, I can't understand anything from this book. Should I ask someone? He whispered. Although he knew some people who used magic, it was possible that none of them were free. Only Sona and Koka were left. He ruled out the first one. It would be impossible for her to use magic at a young age. If he could do that, they wouldn't have needed help against the fallen angel. Thinking about that angel, he remembered that there was someone behind what he was going to do, but he didn't get any name. If I didn't have a name or something I managed to make that identifies their leader, I couldn't do anything. I didn't know who it could be. He had a small sigh and continued with the search for books that could help him. While at the same time he thought about the possibility of asking Kuroka for help with the knowledge about magic. Maybe I'll ask him when he gets back home. He's supposed to be able to go tomorrow or in 2 days. Well, I'll see what I can do by then. He whispered. After having a little conversation to himself, he returned to the topic of looking for a few more books. Unfortunately, he couldn't find any other books that caught his attention, so he decided to go somewhere else. It was a very large place, so it wouldn't be possible for him not to find at least one more book that caught his attention. As he continued forward, he found a small book. At least it looked small, because the books next to it were large and the wonder was almost half of them. He shrugged his shoulders and went for that book. He didn't lose anything in seeing what it was about. Once he reached it, he could see that it was about cooking. He raised his eyebrow slightly in confusion. What's a book like that doing on a shelf like that? Or are the other books also cooking books? He asked himself. To clear his doubts about that, he decided to look at the books that were next to the one he had taken. He was a little surprised to see that the book that was there didn't have much in common with the one he had just taken. This is a little weird. Why is there a book about yokai here? Although he didn't know how much was known about them. Apparently they even had a book about them, but the strangest thing was that it was big, at least bigger than the cookbook he grabbed. It was thin, so it shouldn't have much information about them. Does this mean something to me? He said, doubt clearly in his voice. He had a strange idea about why those books were together. I guess it can't be anything. And just as that theory came to him, it quickly left his head. Now, what was I supposed to look for? Let's see, I have history books. One about yokai, one about cooking. I guess I shouldn't worry about anything for now. Although I didn't know what things I should look for, I could do it when I read the history books that I just took. That way I could have references of what I should look for to know about things in this world. I don't know how long I've been looking. I think it would be best to find Sona so we can leave. With that said, he went in search of the little black-haired girl. He just hoped she wasn't waiting at the meeting point they had with Sona. The brunette had finished looking for the book she was looking for. The only bad thing about all that was that she didn't want anyone to see the book she was carrying with her, and even less so the blonde. He was one of her few friends and he might laugh at her for carrying that. Now we just have to wait for Naruto to come back. I don't think it will take long, she thought calmly. Even if she was a little nervous, she didn't want anyone to notice, so she was acting as she always did, a serious look and remaining calm. I think I should bring something else to hide what I'm carrying, she whispered. She decided to go get a few more books that she was looking for as a secondary matter. What she liked about the library was that it somehow showed you what might catch your attention the most. It was some kind of spell, but she didn't know what it was. She wasn't very advanced with spells and she didn't have much training with magic. The little she knew was making her magic power feel better. In more normal words, it was making her power rise to the point where it was easy to detect up to a certain range. And the other thing was the opposite, hiding it. She found it useful to know how to do it, or at least try to. Since she couldn't hide from her sister and parents, that would be very complicated for her age. And besides, they were adult demons and knew how to handle their power in a very good way. Managing to deceive them by hiding their presence would be very complicated if not impossible. At least until she managed to develop her powers and managed to surpass her parents and sister. She still didn't have a defined goal, so she tried to do a little of the things that caught her attention. That way I'd know what he wanted to do when I managed to get his entourage. Will Naruto want to join mine? She wondered. Maybe he would, but she couldn't get ahead of herself. She didn't have an answer and she hadn't even asked him. Worse yet, she didn't have the pieces, so it was best to leave that question for another time. Now that I remember, I didn't tell Naruto about how the library works. Well, I don't think it's necessary. It's not like he can do something that would be frowned upon here if he's just looking for books. He said convincingly. I guess I'll take some cooking books, so he can say some reasonable explanation. He nodded at his idea and went to the nearby shelf. Although the place showed what you were looking for, it didn't give you something specific, and if it did, it was somewhat strange, but not impossible. Since the place gives you suggestions and you have to choose what you're going to take. With Naruto. Ah, I'm here now. Where's Sona? He said, looking around. Maybe she left. He asked himself a little nervously. I think it would be best to wait a bit to see if she shows up. If she doesn't come, I can use Senjutsu to find her. He said with conviction. It's a flawless plan, so nothing can go wrong. 10 minutes later. The blonde was a little uneasy. He was already waiting for Sona to arrive. And she didn't appear. He didn't know if he should wait a moment longer or start looking for her. He decided to do the first. I don't think 5 more minutes will do any harm. If she doesn't appear, I can find her with Senjutsu and nothing would happen. He whispered. Fortunately, the brunette was approaching him, but at a slow pace. She was just a few meters away from reaching the blonde. Naruto heard someone coming by the sound of footsteps. They weren't very loud. But being a ninja had certain advantages. He turned around and could see Sona coming slowly. He didn't know why and he didn't think he should ask, so he simply decided to wait for her. Sona had already reached the blonde and spoke to him. Here you were. I looked for you in some places while I was coming back. I thought that maybe you didn't know how to get here. The place is almost like a labyrinth if you get distracted. And what were you doing? She asked with a certain degree of curiosity. Nothing much, I was waiting for you to arrive. You know, I was already getting paranoid when I saw that you weren't coming and I was about to go look for you. But since you're here, shall we go? He finished with a smile. The brunette nodded and left with the blonde. Before she could leave, Naruto asked Sona a question. Hey, Sona, how can we get out with these books? Was the question that kept going around in her head. Since they had entered, there was no one at the door and no one guarding the place either. It seemed very curious to her that anyone could enter. Honestly, I don't really understand how this works. My Oni-sama told me that there was some spell that allowed people to enter without anyone watching them or something like that. It was very confusing. If I remember correctly, I think it was used to track people who tried to take a book without asking for it. But how do you ask for the book if there is no one there? He asked, looking around. We're supposed to approach the desk near the entrance and leave the books on top of it. Then someone has to come in a magic circle, or they just have to give us some kind of seal on the book so it's recorded that someone took them. He said calmly and got a small nod. Well, this is a little confusing to me. But what you mean is that someone must appear when we approach and leave the book, right? Sona nodded. That was basically what she meant. So without wasting any more time, they decided to go to the desk that was there. They put down the books. And a magic circle appeared from it. A man with white hair and a beard of the same color with a dark brown robe came out. Good morning, what can I do for you? Said the old man in a friendly manner. We wanted to bring this, Sona said, gesturing to the small stack of books in front of the old man. Oh, sure. Just give me a few seconds. After finishing speaking, the old man put his hand on the small stack of books and a small magic circle appeared. What happened from the bottom to the top of the books? It was not noticeable what it did to the books, at least from the black-haired girl's point of view. In return for the blonde, it was something else. He could see how it seemed that small seals were placed on each book randomly. He only managed to remember where a seal was in all the books he could see. It was not that simple, since the placement of these was very fast, and if you did not have a well-trained eye, then you could not see anything. And since it disappeared quickly, he managed to remember that there was one in the bottom corner of the book of the yokai. Should I look at what the seal does? I think it's better not to. I might get into trouble, and that's the last thing I'm looking for right now, he thought analytically. Is that all, young people? Asked the old man. Yes, that's all, Sona replied quickly. Well, we'll see each other again. Oh, and before you go, the book the blonde is carrying at his side is something curious. Is it necessary to know about them? Asked the old man. Sona didn't know what book he was referring to and just stared at Naruto, waiting for an answer. Why are you so interested in me taking that book? He asked seriously. No, it's just interesting to see that someone wants to carry that book. More than anything because it's incomplete, or rather you can't know more about them if they don't tell you directly. Achieving that is very difficult. They don't trust others very much, you know. He answered calmly. But, leaving that aside, could you tell me why you carry the book you have there? I'm just curious, I hadn't heard about them before. When I saw the book I decided to take it since at first glance it was short. He said, lying about the reasons why he was taking it. If that's all, can we go? He spoke again before the old man could ask questions again. Yes, you can go. Anyway, I hope you have a good read, young people. As soon as he finished speaking, the old man was no longer in front of them, he had disappeared in some strange form of dust. For the blonde, that seemed suspicious, while Sona did not pay attention to what happened or what the old man did. Sea Tree Mansion. Naruto and Sona had arrived a few minutes ago, each one went a different way, but not before the blonde asked where the library was. He didn't have much confidence after what just happened, he had a strange feeling. So he decided not to go to that place for a while, hoping that the old man wouldn't appear again. I should check on Kurama, it's strange not to hear from him since I came here. Without further delay the blonde entered his mental space. Staying in a corner of the hallway. Mental space. Ah, this place is much better than the sewer it was before. He said, appreciating the environment around him. It was certainly much better than before. Now, where could it be? He asked himself. While the place was different, he could also do so with the size of it. Right now it could be said that he did not know his own mind, or at least not the location of things. Well, I have time to do this. I don't think it will take me long. Without saying anything else, he went in search of his longtime tenant. Minutes later. Ah, where is it supposed to be? Naruto didn't think it would take him so long to look for what was possibly the biggest thing in the whole place. But he couldn't find it anywhere, it was as if it had disappeared. He decided to calm down for a moment so he could think with a cool head instead of a hot one. That never worked well for him, at least not most of the time. Let's see. The cell was in front and I changed it for the collar, I think. And if Kurama can move. I don't think I couldn't find something as big as him in this place. He said disappointedly at the end. Now that I think about it, I haven't checked if he's in any of the caves I placed. It was a good idea to make a few, let's not waste any more time. I have to find where he is. With his conviction renewed, he went back in search of his lifelong tenant. The blonde began to search very carefully, the caves were already large from the inside. But, from the outside point of view they were medium-sized so Kurama could not enter. It was a little complicated to see in each one since they were all very dark. With a little time he was able to see the first ones that were close, unfortunately he couldn't find it. There were only a few more left, he didn't waste any more time and quickly went in search of the last ones he had left. It took about 20 minutes until he could see one of the few caves left, he entered and this time he was lucky. Kurama was there, asleep. But at least he found him, now the question was why he was so sleepy out of nowhere. This is strange, he said, looking analytically at Kurama. He shouldn't really care if he sleeps, since he's already been sleeping almost his entire life. Or at least that's what Naruto thought, since he had a lot more interaction with him when the war was going on. Although they became friends, he was never able to go deeper and they were more like comrades at that time. Until the Rakudo Sennin appeared and things changed, Kurama began to truly trust him. And to think that he was such a grump when I first talked to him, he spoke nostalgically. I never thought I would actually end up somewhere else and he would follow me. The blonde turned to look at him and gave him a sincere smile. You are the best friend I could ask for, Kurama, he said with great happiness. On the other hand, the Biju was waking up, and had heard that little final dialogue. He made a small, imperceptible smile and thought. You are also the best I could ask for Gaki, no, Naruto. He stopped thinking about it and made a sign indicating that he was getting up. The blonde noticed it and moved a few steps away. He was close to Kurama so seeing him wake up might crush him indirectly. I think I should be nicer to Kurama. If I think about it a little, everything we went through makes him look like a source of power and not a companion. Being nice to him from time to time is nothing wrong with it, she thought with conviction. Although, Naruto would never treat his friend like that. If you looked at it from another point of view, it seemed like that was what was happening. Hey, Kurama, are you okay? Why that question, Naruto? Come on, it's not that common to see you in a cave. And even less so that you act strangely. The blonde said, making his point. Besides, you had mentioned that something strange was happening. Could you tell me what's going on? It seems like you're maturing nicely. I just mentioned it once and you didn't forget. I think I'm noticing a change, said the Kyuubi with some mockery. Oh, come on. I couldn't always be someone who ignores everything that goes on around me, but, leaving that aside. Will you tell me what's going on? He said calmly. Okay, I didn't want to tell you right now. But, since you insist so much, I guess I could tell you what's going on. Time skip 1 hour later. Out of the mind space. With Serafall. The Mao was tired, not in a physical way. Rather it was something mental. What the blonde had told her the day before was something a little too much for her head to bear. She believed in parallel worlds and different universes. After all, the Underworld is like a world inside the Earth, and the whole thing about different worlds made her a little curious. So she believed everything Naruto told her. The only thing she didn't understand was why he appeared in the dimensional crack. She remembered a part of what the blonde told her. Flashback. As I told you before, I'm not from this place. I come from a different world, though. Surely you could tell what kind of world I might have come from. The blonde said seriously. Yes, a world of ninjas, right? She answered a little stunned. Bingo. You guessed it right, so you might get an idea of what a ninja's life is like. I remember you said a bit about what the ninjas here were like. He said cheerfully. That's true, but I don't know if all ninjas are the same in all worlds. Right now, there could be an infinite number of their variants. The Mao commented, maintaining her daze. Well, that may be true. I don't know how many worlds there could be, much less how many variants of ninja there would be, either. He spoke thoughtfully. And, how did you get here? I guess I could give you a little summary of how I got here. It might be a bit long and I can't tell you everything. Huh, why can't you tell me everything? You see, there is something that does not allow me to fully say what happened for me to get here. But it does not apply to telling something of what happened, he answered quickly. If there's something that won't let you say it, then I'll settle for the little you tell me. The Mao accepted the little information the blonde would tell her. Although she had several questions, she couldn't force him to tell her everything, even less if he was conditioned. And it was at that moment that she thought. Who could make any condition? She was curious at that moment. The stun effect had been undone for a few moments. Her curiosity was stronger than anything else. Unfortunately at that moment it didn't help her at all. End of flashback. Sigh, I should see where Naruto and Sotan are, she said to herself in an animated way until she remembered something important she had to do. I completely forgot, she cried desperately. The Mao had remembered what she had promised Sona. She was supposed to accompany her and they could have a moment as sisters. But, right now it must be impossible. Still, she didn't care if she had to apologize a lot for doing that to her sister. She would do it without hesitation, since it would be worse for her if she hated her and stopped talking to her. She preferred to eradicate all the angels before that happened. So without further delay he went in search of his little sister, ignoring the note that was near the door. With Naruto. The blonde was thoughtful. He never expected what Kurama had just told him. At least not in the world he was in. He thought that since he had died he would never see him again. But he was wrong. The positive side is that he's not a bad guy. I think it would be a good idea to try to talk to him. According to everything he told me, it's very likely that he was bored from being like this all the time he was in Konoha. Besides, he could help me with the training I'm doing. The blonde whispered. He was starting to deliberate about the things he told him, but he couldn't let that go aside. Having him here could be very beneficial and even more so since he was someone with a lot of experience. Naruto thought a little more about what he said, until he heard someone running as if their life depended on it. He started looking around and didn't notice anything. He thought it must be something else unimportant. And he prepared to go to the room he had. It seemed that no one had noticed that he was in the corner of the mansion. Or simply seeing it that way they thought it was best to leave it like that. He didn't know the answer to that and he didn't bother wanting to know either. The blonde turned around and headed towards his room, not noticing that a desperate Serafall was running very fast. If Naruto could see her he would say that she was at the speed of someone of high Chunin level. It's not like he could assess what level the Mao was at exactly. But, at first glance it would be that assessment. Get out of the way. The black-haired girl shouted. Naruto could only look behind him, although he could easily dodge. At that moment he couldn't, his guard was down. The only thing he could do was prepare for the imminent impact that didn't take long to happen. He was very close to her. So it only took a few seconds for both of them to collide with each other. Naruto fell a little abruptly to the ground with a weight on top of him. It didn't feel very heavy, but the impact did give him a slight pain. His defense might be low, but his physical strength was very high and he could easily come out unscathed from that small blow. On the other hand, the Mao didn't feel it that way. She had felt like she was colliding with something extremely hard. So much so that she thought that maybe they had put some spell in front of her, but when she felt the heat of the thing she collided with, it didn't seem like the case. She looked up a little. And she could see the blonde on the ground. She was surprised by that. Being running at that speed and being distracted by trying to get to her sister as soon as possible, she hadn't noticed that the person in front of her was Naruto. "Hey, what's wrong with you that you're running into me like that?" the blonde asked. While he wasn't angry about it, he was curious about why someone was running like that. He couldn't tell who the person who ran into him was since he could only see for a few seconds who the person was supposed to be. But it was something strange. Normally he wouldn't see it like that. He couldn't see something like that and without being prepared. He shook that out of his thoughts and looked ahead, being able to see Serafall. She was looking at him apologetically. That didn't answer the question he asked. But at least he knew it wasn't with bad intentions. Serafall, could you get off of me?" he said with a bit of regret. Since the position they were in at that moment did not give a good impression. "Huh, why?" the Mao asked doubtfully. She hadn't realized the position they were both in at that moment. "I think you should see how we are so you understand what I mean." The blonde answered the Mao's doubt while looking away. She listened to what Naruto said and looked at the way they were right now. She blushed a little at the sight, although she knew it was an accident. If anyone else besides the two of them knew what happened, they might think other things. Since Serafall was sitting on the blonde's stomach, almost reaching his pelvis area, she had one of her arms next to his head. And she was close to his face. All she had to do was lower her head a little and she could be close to giving the blonde a kiss. Without much delay, she quickly moved away from the blonde. She still had the same blush as before, but it was lessened by what seemed to be just a few red dots. She was a little nervous at that moment to be able to speak coherently, but she was still able to say a few words. "Sorry about that," she said in a slightly low whisper. Luckily Naruto heard her since the place was silent. Sure, there's no problem." He spoke a little nervously. Even though it was a clash that almost ended in something else, he couldn't help but get like that since that would be his first kiss. Of course if you don't count the one he had with Sasuke and the one with the ninja who sucked his chakra. Neither of those counted for Naruto and they never would. Serafall just nodded slowly and stood up before the blonde who was about to stand up. She approached the blonde and helped him up. Naruto quickly accepted her help and couldn't help but look into the Mao's eyes for a few moments. He couldn't explain it but those eyes caught his attention. She only lasted a few moments like that before she spoke again. "Since we're okay now, could you tell me why you were running like that?" Seeing the change in reaction he had when she mentioned why he was running like that, she spoke again. "And please say it calmly." That seemed to work a little, seeing that it calmed down a bit of what was originally there. "It's just that, I was supposed to be doing something with Satan a few hours ago, and I had completely forgotten about it until I remembered it," she answered in a dejected manner. "You haven't seen Satan around here, have you?" she asked hopefully. The blonde nodded and that made the Mao happy, so without much delay he spoke again. "So, could you tell me where she is? It's important that I find her," he asked hurriedly. "Well, there is a small problem with that. But, before you answer, what are you supposed to do?" "Of course, if you can tell me." The blonde spoke calmly. "Oh, it's just that Satan asked me to accompany her somewhere. The only thing is that I didn't know where." He said laughing a little and sticking out his tongue at the end. Naruto got a drop on his forehead. That was being careless. But, now he knew what she meant. "Oh, so that's why." He couldn't finish speaking as Serafall interrupted him. "Wait, do you know what I mean?" the Mao asked in an impressed manner. Of course I know, in the end I was the one who had to accompany Sona. She was a little sad that I couldn't go with you, you know. He said, scolding her. That was something that killed Serafall inside as she stood there with her eyes blank. The blonde had expected something like that, even though he hadn't known her for long. He knew a thing or two about Serafall, so telling her that could cause this to happen. Sai, calm down, it's not something so serious that I would hate you or something like that, he spoke calmly. And it was true, even though Sona was a little sad, it didn't mean that she was going to hate her sister for that. Although it's not like she knew much about how siblings can get along. She couldn't compare what she knows about siblings with Serafall and Sona either, since in the only couple she knew she faced death. Something that she didn't think would happen with those two. Or that's what he thought, life itself could take very strange turns. On the other hand, Serafall still didn't answer, she was no longer staring into space. Right now he felt guilty, she had promised him and she couldn't keep it. And continuing with the answer to your question. I haven't seen her for a while, I don't know how long exactly. But I'm sure she's not outside the mansion, do you want help? The blonde offered in search of Sona. And no, there's no need. I'll do it myself, but first could you tell me where they went, she said in a low voice. Ah, sure, no problem. Sona wanted to go to the library and I accompanied her there, as he said that he remembered that he was forgetting to take the books that were next to him. He was about to hit himself if it weren't for the fact that Serafall was with him. Thank you, and without further ado, Serafall left in search of her sister. Leaving the blonde alone, who decided to resume his path to his room and try to read the books he brought. Time skipped 30 minutes. I finally arrived, Naruto said tiredly. The distance to his room wasn't that far, so his tiredness was due to the things that happened to him that same day, things that he didn't even expect. Or at least not one of them, it was definitely a long day. It still hadn't come to an end, after all it was still afternoon. Well, I'll take advantage of the time and use some clones to read this, or I could do it myself, he began to think carefully about the two options he had at that moment. He was certainly not one for books and preferred to do other things, but at some point it could depend on that. He shrugged his shoulders and decided to make some clones. Good. You have been summoned today to do something extremely important, he shouted in a commanding manner. He looked at the 6 clones he made and could see that they were all in a military salute pose. What is our mission, boss? Said the first clone on the right. He had a serious expression. That's easy to answer, you'll have one of the most difficult missions I had as a child. The blonde answered with a very serious voice. So what's the mission, boss? Said the clone in the middle of everyone with a bit of fear in his voice. You'll have to study. The blonde answered in a voice that implied he was offering his condolences to all the clones present. All the clones had a drop of water coming out from behind their heads, they expected that they would have to do something extremely drastic. Not having to study, but they didn't care and continued with the papers they were doing. Understood, boss, they all said in unison. The original Naruto nodded and left the room, although he wanted to rest for a moment. Now he didn't have the luxury of doing so, he couldn't just sit there doing nothing. With the little he saw he realized that the world he was in was also dangerous, and he didn't know how much it was. So he decided to be cautious and do something he stopped doing a few days ago, his training. Sea Tree Mansion, Garden. Well, this is a good time to do a little training. I haven't done it for a few days and now that I'm completely free, I can't let up on this. He exclaimed with conviction. Now, where do I start? And just like that, all that confidence and conviction were gone in a few moments. The blonde wanted to train, but he had to make progress in all the ninja branches. He didn't know which one he should start with, until he remembered that he should do something simple to start. Chakra control. Something undoubtedly simple in a certain way for him and that would prevent him from wasting the chakra he uses too much. Although he had very large reserves on his own, it was no excuse to waste it so easily. He had reached an acceptable level when he could do the Rasengan and its variants. But, just because I managed to do a single jutsu doesn't mean I could do the others as if it were nothing. He learned basic wind manipulation and then was able to do it in a good way that he managed to combine his element with the Rasengan, so why not exploit more the element he has had since he was born? It sounds easier said than done, Plus I don't know any jutsu of my own element, he said depressedly. It could be that he was one of the few who didn't even know a jutsu of his own element. Or possibly the only one. The Hyuga wouldn't count, and neither would Tonto Lee and Guy. They were more oriented towards taijutsu, so it wasn't a high priority for them to learn any. He couldn't count on any of his friends since they all trained jutsus of the clan they belonged to, that left aside the need for them to be able to do an elemental jutsu. Although, Sakura didn't use any elemental jutsu either. Or maybe she did and I never saw it. The blonde continued to make a martyr of himself with that. It didn't last long like that, it wasn't time for jokes or wasting time on meaningless things. It would be best to ask Kurama, he should at least know something. He whispered. Kurama, he screamed mentally. What's wrong Naruto, don't you see that I'm sleeping, he answered the call lazily. I don't understand why you still want to sleep, we're supposed to have fixed the problem already. He said in a strange way. It's not my fault that you can't understand the good things about sleeping. He answered almost as if he was annoyed by Naruto's comment. Of course. Well, leaving that aside, he couldn't finish speaking since Kurama spoke before him. Yes, I know what you want to ask, right? You know I can hear what you're thinking, right? What? Since when can you do that? She asked in an agitated manner. She didn't know Kurama could do that, she never expected him to be able to do it. And as if it were nothing, he told her so without beating around the bush. Well, that's a question I couldn't answer with certainty. But, if I remember correctly, I managed to do it when you almost broke the seal when facing Nagato. To be honest, I can't figure out how exactly it happened so I could do it. I thought I wouldn't be able to do it again when Minato repaired the seal, but that wasn't the case and from that day on I could tell what you were thinking. Heavy sigh. Well, never mind, several things happened today. Now, could you tell me some of them? There's no problem with that. The thing would be to know which one you want to try to do first, so I was thinking of about 3 jutsus, so choose any of the 3, they are almost similar, I don't think any problem will occur if you practice any of them. Well, I have nothing to lose by trying. So let's try, he finished with conviction in his thought. By the way, how am I supposed to do it if you haven't taught me? Don't worry about it, just make a clone and then disperse. Okay, he said in a very unconvincing manner. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, the moment he did so, the characteristic cloud of smoke appeared. That's it, what else do I have to do? Just wait a bit and you'll see. Closing parenthesis, dot. Naruto waited for a few minutes until Kurama spoke to him again. Everything's ready, you can disperse it. Naruto listened to what Kurama had said and then he understood everything. Somehow he had given the information to his clone and at the moment of dispersing the clone he received the information. Something that could be useful in his training, but a question came to his mind. Hey, Kurama, couldn't you do that with me without me having to make a clone? I don't know, I just tried it for the first time and it seems to have worked. That's why I asked you to make a clone, I didn't know if it could work directly. So I decided to play it safe. The Biju answered. And if you tried it directly without knowing how to do it, could something happen to me? Don't come with questions I can't answer, Gaki. Sigh, but I might make your head explode. I don't know what's going on. So that's the best answer I could think of. The Biju said sincerely. Now, stop asking so many questions and do some jutsu, he spoke to him again impatiently. Calm down, there's no need to get angry. I'll do it now. With that last bit, the blonde began to try to make the hand seals. Futon. Rinkuden Subut, he shouted the jutsu loudly. For some reason it seemed familiar to him. The jutsu was about to hit one of the nearby trees. Naruto thought that nothing serious would happen. He hadn't applied much chakra, so the worst thing would be if the tree had a small hole in the trunk. Unfortunately for him, that did not happen and the jutsu ended up piercing completely until it reached 3 more trees and a 4th tree that left a large mark in the middle of it, giving the appearance that it could fall at any moment. But how is that possible? I barely used chakra in the jutsu. He asked and shouted in an excited manner. Hey, Kurama, you lied to me. You said that it wouldn't cause much trouble to do that jutsu. He received no response from the tenant inside him. Kurama. Hey, are you listening to me? Loud and clear, Gaki, he answered in a surprised manner. He had also felt that Naruto used little chakra with the jutsu. So he didn't expect that to happen, he didn't think about it for a second. So can you tell me why that happened? He said in the calmest way possible. Naruto, right now I'm the same as you. I can't understand why this happened. Maybe you somehow have a greater affinity to wine than you had before. That's the most logical thing I can think of from all this. He spoke thoughtfully. The Biju couldn't think of anything, it was one of the few times that this happened to him. Why don't you try doing another jutsu? Why should I do it? I don't know Gaki, maybe to verify if it's just a matter of that jutsu or if it's possible that what I just said could happen, he said sarcastically. Okay, I understand your sarcasm. Naruto tried to do another one of the jutsus that Kurama had given him. He quickly chose between the two jutsus he had left to do and shouted again. Futon. Tappa, he put the same amount of chakra as in the previous jutsu, although the jutsu he used right now was noted to be powerful, it did not reach the tree that was in front of him. So he deduced that it was short range. Well, I can't say what happened since it didn't manage to hit anything. But, you could tell that if it did hit something it could make a big impact. He said analytically. It's not like you had to be a genius to be able to notice that anyway. Curious, very curious, he spoke as if he had some clue as to why that was happening. Why do you say that, Kurama? Don't take it too seriously, it's just something that occurred to me, that's all. You can keep doing something other than ninjutsu, at least for a few days. He answered demandingly. It seems that the words his partner had told him were not to be left aside. If that was the case he preferred not to have to disobey what he had agreed to. Well, if you say so, now that I remember. You know, two things happened to me today where I saw things move in slow motion for a few moments. Do you know why that was? So it's already starting to manifest. I didn't think it would be so soon. Manifest what? What do you mean? It's something simple, Naruto, I mean, Kurama left a moment of suspense and spoke again. Sharingan, he couldn't help but feel like spitting when he said that name, he never liked those eyes. If it were up to him he would tear those eyes out of anyone, and even more so if it was an Uchiha. Because of them he was locked up twice, so he had a deep hatred for them, but thanks to Naruto he was able to dissuade a little of the hatred he had towards them. It didn't stop him from still hating them, but it wasn't as intense anymore. The Sharingan manifests like this. It's not that easy to manifest that quickly, but since the Uchiha gave them to you and in a very advanced form. It may manifest differently, not for nothing were they the cursed eyes. You have to have very strong feelings for it to manifest, and the strongest the Uchiha could get was hatred. I think you can already understand what I'm saying. Right. Yes, I understand what you mean, he said with a small feeling of guilt. Although he couldn't help Sasuke completely until they both died, he couldn't help but feel guilty for not being able to help him not feel that hatred before. But, it's too late. Now is not the time for regrets. And how do you think he managed to manifest the Sharingan? Asked a curious Naruto. I have a method that might work, but it might be really unpleasant and you might not want to do it. What should I do? Relive the memories you had when you were a child.